Baltimore City Council Budget and Appropriations Committee, we're reconvening the hearing for Council Bill 17-0065, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2018. I'm joined to my right by Council President Jack Young, Councilman John Bullock from the 9th District, Councilwoman Shannon Sneed from the 13th District, Councilman Ed Reisinger from the 10th District, and Vice President of the Council, Councilwoman Sharon Green Middleton from the 6th District. To my immediate left is Vice Chair of the Committee, Councilman Leon Pinkett from the 7th District, Councilman Chris Burnett from the 8th District, and Councilman Brandon Scott from the 2nd District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To my immediate right is Marguerite Curran, staff to the committee. Paul Plymouth from the Council President's Office is in the back, and representing the mayor's Karan Banks. We've got a panel to start off with. This is the 9:30 session. We've got 1 hour scheduled. I'm going to ask that all of the agencies, we've got 3 agencies here, the DPW, who's going to be the lead, along with the Environmental Control Board, and BCRP Horticulture. I'm going to ask that each agency keep their presentation to somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 8 minutes, and then we're going to shift immediately to questions from the council. With that, Director Chow, if you could get started and please introduce everyone from your team that is with us today. We are also joined by Councilman Ryan Dorsey from the 3rd District, Kara Kunst and Lester Davis from the Council President's Office. And for those folks testifying today, if you could please be sure to speak into the microphone. This is being streamed live on TV, so if you don't speak in the microphone, we can't hear you, and someone will politely interrupt you and remind you to please speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Costello, Council President, and Council members. Good morning. I'm Rudy Chow, Public Works Director. I'm here to present to you my agency's budget for FY18. We are a large agency, as you know, that we simply touches almost every single life, every citizen's out there every day. And certainly I'm very proud of the work that our employees perform at all hours of the day and sometimes under very difficult circumstances. The challenge every budget year is to continue to improve our service to our citizens within the funds available. That means we must use and analyze the data we have built on our experiences, plan for years into the futures, and be proactive in our thinking and actions. Be smart about how we invest and be willing to innovate. Okay, so I got 60. Okay, I'm not quite there yet. So our challenges, as you know, managing our underground infrastructures and so on, all that is a huge challenge for us as our aging infrastructures is rapidly approaching 80 years in terms of average age. And certainly we are increasing our preventive maintenance in lieu of the reactionary maintenance, and because due to the deferred. Okay. Got it. All right, I've been directed to go to the slides. Okay, so here is, let me go to the service number 660, which is Healthy Communities. This is the administration of the solid waste operations. This service provides the administrative support to the entire Bureau of Solid Waste and to improve the cleanliness of the city. And we have reorganized recently our Bureau into the 4 quadrants where our all cleaning and collection service are performed. Unlike in the past where most of the tasks are citywide tasks, what we did was we broke them into geographically smaller zones to increasing the outreach to the community, working closer with the community, and certainly have my folks take pride in seeing the results of their hard work and to cut down on travel times and so on, all that, just simply for improvements in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. For the public right-of-way cleaning, which is program 661, the departments continue to trend the increase on number of miles swept from 101,000 miles in FY15 to aggressively to 130,000 miles in FY18. Now, mechanical street sweeping, as you know, we went citywide, removed tons of trash and debris and sediments from city streets, which is good news for neighborhoods and streams. And just by way of stats, we collect about 1 million pounds of trash every 2 to 3 weeks from city streets. Now, the mechanical street sweeping activities will be fully funded by the Stormwater Fund in about $5.1 million in FY18. Now, included in this service is $400,000 in special funding for 3 positions to provide daily cleaning services in the casino area, which is paid for by the impact funds.
Do it. What you want? Make a lot of noise, right?
Okay, looks like 662 is missing. So vacant and abandoned properties and boarding, this is, well, first of all, I just want to touch on our proactive rat abatement program. As you know, we expanded the rat abatement program from a reactionary driven by 311 to a citywide proactive rat abatement program that we have now, and we're projecting that in FY18, we'll be abating about 25,000 barrels, comparing to FY15, about 47,000 barrels. So in a way, what we believe this proactive rat abatement program is working. And the cleaning and boarding activities under this service, and certainly is assisted by CDBG fund, about $1.4 million. Now for program 663, which is waste removal and recycling. In FY17, we distributed nearly 200,000 municipal trash cans to our citizens. And then certainly, and a part of the program, our initiative is to reduce the availability of food source for rats and encourage citizens and residents to store and set out their mixed refuse appropriately. As part of the municipal trash can program, recycling stickers were made available so residents could use their old trash cans for recycling. The key to remember is that these cans must have a lid. That is a way to prevent the food source for the rats. Now, in FY18 budget included an amount about $456,000 for electronic recycling, a service that is available to our residents at our free convenience drop-off center locations. And certainly, our curbside single-stream recycling is a great service for residents, and we need more community to participate and engage. Citizens and individual household, multifamily landlords, property managers, business owners, community association, faith-based organization, condos, and schools, and certainly their involvement is certainly vital to our success. And sale of bins, recycled bins, is always available at reduced price.
God, you bang the top.
For program 664, waste reuse and disposal, the FY18 budget included $600,000 to make improvements to the Northwest Transfer Station, the site of our new convenience options for small haulers to drop off their load instead of perhaps illegally dumping on our alleys and other means. Now, we are looking forward to perhaps opening a transfer station on the east side in the coming fiscal year. Now, this service included about $885,000 in need for future landfill closures and another $1.6 million for future landfill development costs. The service included 5 citizen convenience drop-off centers across the city, and we have now completed our design for the Bowley's Land solid waste collection yard, improvement which we'll hope to include additional opportunities for small haulers to use this location as well as load disposal. The Quarantine Road landfill, as you know, is under expansion. We are under the phase 3 process, which is the study and design with the Maryland Department of Environment in terms of expanding our landfill capacity into the future, buying us additional years. With that, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Woods, our Environmental Control Board.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Woods. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Control Board. Thank you, members of City Council and Chair of the committee. This is service number 117. The Environmental Control Board is responsible for adjudicating environmental citations that are issued by other agencies that affect sanitation, health, safety, and other quality of life issues. The goal of the agency is to change behavior, and one of those mechanisms is through the citation and hearing process. We provide education through the hearing process on the policy reasons behind the violations. An appeal of a hearing officer's decision then goes to the full board. We recently changed the membership of the board to be more aligned with what our missions are for the agency. So we included seats for education and community advocacy. In addition to the other seats that we have, there are 7 city agency representatives and city council, and there are 8 members from the public that have certain expertise required. When a hearing is not requested or the original fine is not paid, there's a default process, and I've been working closely with the law department and collections to improve the collection process for outstanding fines. The 2 performance measures that I have highlighted include the percentage of time a quorum is present for board meetings, which has significantly improved, which allows us to conduct official business, including hearing of appeals, and also the percentage of first hearings scheduled within 60 days, which has been a problem area, as you can see from the numbers. There are several reasons for that, one of which is the increased number of hearings that we hold. One of my goals as director of the agency has been to make the process more accessible for people and to get people in to have the hearings so that they can actually participate in the process. And the numbers display the difference. The number of hearings per year was pretty steady before I joined the agency at around 4,500 per year, and that was in fiscal years 13 and 14. The first year that I was with the agency, I came in midway through fiscal 15, and the numbers for fiscal 15 for the number of hearings was 5,467. In fiscal 16, there were 6,756, and in fiscal 17, the numbers were pulled a couple of weeks ago, so we still had about 6 more weeks left to go. And we had 7,287 hearings so far in fiscal 17. So we're looking at about 3,000 more a year, which is a lot of volume. So that affects our ability to get the hearings in within the time frame that I would want. Additionally, other than this service, we are leading the charge on Be More Beautiful, which is a beautification effort, the peer-to-peer network that was expanded from the previous Clean Core. That's all I had to present. I'm happy to take questions whenever.
Before we get to Rec and Parks, Rebecca, I just wanted to check the FY16 actual of 2%. Is that a typo?
It's not. That's the number of hearings that we're scheduling within the time frame that I would anticipate being appropriate, which is 45 days. Along with the volume increase that I just articulated, we are hit with groups of citations all at one time sometimes. So for instance, housing just issued the registration citations in the beginning of January, and we were hit with about 12,000 citations going out within 3 weeks, which means that the number of hearing requests coming in are a ton at one time. Additionally, we're dealing with a very antiquated mainframe system that makes scheduling a very difficult process. We're working through that process and trying to do the best that we can to use what we have for the mainframe, knowing that certain things are not going to improve. We've improved our staffing for scheduling in particular, so it's better than it was at that point, but we did have a rough fiscal year for scheduling.
Got it. Maybe that's something Mr. Klein could take some time to talk with you about after, about his innovation fund.
And we have, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We have absolutely, and I've talked with his staff several times, and we've worked through what we can do at this point. We've made some significant improvements, which I think will show in the next fiscal year. The issue, I think, is still going to remain with volume because we are having a lot more hearings. I still have the same number of staff and the same number of hearing rooms. So we will continue to see an issue, but there certainly will be improvements.
Thanks, Rebecca. Bill?
I'm Bill. Good morning, members of the council. I'm Bill Vondrasek, the Acting Director of the Department of Recreation and Parks, and I'm just going to mention one thing before I turn it over to our Chief Horticulturist, Melissa Grimm, to give you an overview of the slide, which I guess is... There we go. I'd let you know that over the last 6 or 7 years under Melissa's leadership, the horticulture division has gone from almost entirely generally funded to about a third on earned revenue, and that's because of the events that she runs at the conservatory in Silburn Arboretum and the gift shop. And with that, I'll let her talk about the rest of the service.
Good morning. As Bill said, I'm Melissa Grimm. I'm the division chief for the horticulture division of Recreation and Parks. We operate the Rawlings Conservatory and Silburn Arboretum, two of city's premier, in my opinion, public gardens. We also operate 12 city farm locations where the community can rent plots to garden, as well as maintain about a dozen locations of other ornamental plantings, including what's out in front of here in City Hall. We also maintain the administration buildings in Rec and Parks, and we are taking care of the Pimlico area median strip only. The gardens have, as you can see, about 60,000 visitors per year combined. We think that's a really great number, and we're also quite confident that it's low. Many of you have been out to Silburn and know the layout and understand that it's pretty difficult to capture everyone coming in. We have lots of dog walkers and joggers, but at the conservatory we also are able to capture that better. I want to highlight just a couple of our real feature programs at our facilities. The Druid Hill Farmers Market starts next week. It's one of our flagship programs at the conservatory. We work with the Friends of Druid Hill Park to put it on. It runs every Wednesday through September, and it's a real programmatic function. It serves not only almost as a fresh food convenience store because it's so easy to zip in there after work. We also have music and yoga and a new fitness program starting this year, as well as horticultural programs. There's a multitude of other programs that happen at the conservatory. We have a paint night coming up, cocktail events, other yoga programs, as well as our seasonal flower shows, of which I've seen several of you attend. Silburn has a wide gamut of programming as well for the general public: bird walks, gardening workshops. We have summer nature camp going on this year. We have an art exhibit coming up. It's a pretty broad spectrum, and we work with most of our friends groups to put on that programming. They function in a great way as our programming and marketing arm, as we are kind of a small division. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as a reminder, it's 9:48 a.m. right now. Our goal is to get done at 10:30 a.m. with this panel. If we have anything remaining, actually, colleagues, I'm going to ask that we focus on ECB and Rec and Parks during our questions first, and then get to Public Works, and whatever we have remaining on Public Works, we can roll into the next session. Also like to introduce Councilman Robert Stokes from the 12th District and Kara Kunst, Director of Legislative Services for Council President Young. Mr. President?
Okay. This one is for Environmental Control Board. The performance measure table have a metric called percentage of violators who reoffend after completing the diversion program with a target for this year of 0. This seemed like an odd performance measure to put under the control board, because if the person reoffends but pays their citation, would you know if they're reoffending, and how is this metric going to be tracked?
Yes, we do track all of the diversion cases. We are periodically putting that through the mainframe to see if any citations have been issued for the property and for the person. And then we do a closer analysis if there are other citations to determine which type of citation. So we're looking for reoffenders for the same type of citation, because the diversion program is the education based on the trash can violation. It's offered for the $50 trash can related citation, so not having a proper lid, having cans out on non-collection day. So the diversion program is geared towards those particular violations, and we're looking for any reoffense for the same type of violation, because the education should cover that information, and the goal is that with that education and the removal of that fine, that's the incentive for compliance.
Okay. This one is for Recreation and Parks, the Horticulture Division. The performance measure table lists a metric that measures the percentage of operating cost dollars for public gardens recovered from earned revenue. This committee wasn't provided with any information about the amount earned revenue for this service. We need you to provide the council with the last 5 years of earned revenue from public gardens maintained by Recs and Parks. You can just send it to us.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, all right. And this, anybody could answer this one here. According to the agency's proposal, there were outgoing concerns that behavior change is needed and the need of a dire need for an action campaign to combat trash and litter that must include public education and neighborhood participation and litter control. What are your agencies doing to address that concern and push for more of a behavior change?
So the Environmental Control Board, in collaboration with many of the other agencies, particularly including DPW, are working on Be More Beautiful, which is a peer-to-peer education network that is being piloted in 23 neighborhoods for the first year, with the intention to roll it out citywide after that first pilot year. Included in the pilot year is efforts to educate captains in each of those pilot communities, who are then responsible for getting their neighbors to sign the pledge to participate in litter pickup and also keeping their direct area, direct block clean, and participate in cleaning events. And there are also grants available to those neighborhoods to do the particular projects that they feel are necessary to give the beautification efforts to their community that are necessary for that particular community.
And Mr. Council President, I would add that I know in the rec centers that Tracy is rolling out and has rolled out a recycling program where she's trying to teach the kids about recycling and where trash goes if it doesn't make it into the can.
Okay. All right, this one is for Public Works, and then I'll just come back on the next round because I want to give everybody else a chance. Mr. Child, can you provide the committee with the number of funded vacancies and salary saved positions for the Department of Public Works? Under the fiscal 2018 budget highlights on page 386, the first bullet says the budget funds $600,000 for expanding high-capacity trash cans across all 19 city business districts. We need you to provide this committee with a cost per can, including installation costs, a total number of cans, the $600,000 will fund, and the location for each can to be installed.
So quick note, Mr. President, that was your first documentation request? Okay, and we are at 48, 47.
Good morning.
Mr. Chalmers, yeah, hang on one. That was his first one. Okay, so the last 5 years of revenue earned?
For the gardens, recreation, the
For-
gardens. Is,
Okay, so that's number 47? And then 48, what you just asked, Mr. President, and Carrie, you got that in writing? Thank you, sorry.
So as regarding to the smart cans, there is a grand total of 356 smart cans throughout the 19 business districts throughout the city. 348 will be single station smart cans, and 8 will be double station smart cans.
Okay. Are you measuring the number of houses that are not using our municipal trash cans? Could you give us, or are you measuring that at
We
all?
periodically do a survey. We have not done one this fiscal year, but we're planning to do one. I can provide you with those numbers.
Okay, because when I ride around, I don't see many of the cans out. I see bags out. And I don't have no problem with them taking the bags out and setting them there because people are really taking the municipal cans. I don't know what they're doing with them, but they are stealing them.
Well, when we track lost and stolen cans through the 311 system. When a resident's can is stolen, they report it to 311. We start the initial investigation, and we work to replace that can.
But I don't know whether they really steal them or not, or whether they keep them in the house to store other stuff in. They nice big cans that
Yep.
people can store stuff in.
Right. And we do.
But they'll tell us that the can was stolen.
Right.
I can't say it's true or false, but I know that when I bought my recycling cans, I used one to store stuff in my house and one to just put stuff out with my recycles. So I'm wondering if that's happening as well.
Right. And if that is the case, code enforcement could go through those areas, and when the can's not out on collection day, that is a citation.
Okay. All right. I got some more stuff, but I don't.
Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I was told recently that ECB is has something to do with liquor outlet oversight. So we have an ordinance that prohibits liquor stores from stores that make more than 20% of their gross revenue in liquor sales from being able to sell candy and snacks to kids. Does the ECB provide oversight or enforcement on that?
If it's a zoning code violation, I believe housing is who is doing investigations on that or will be. And so they may issue citations that come to the Environmental Control Board, but we're not enforcing those, we're adjudicating those. So the hearing officers would be utilizing the zoning code and the testimony provided by the issuing agency and by the respondent to determine if a violation is found and then what the appropriate fine is. But as far as going out and enforcing by way of citation, that would be the issuing agency is in control of that.
The explanation that I received was that it was the burden to prove that the liquor store was making more than 20% of its revenue through liquor sales. The burden to prove that was on the city, and that it meant that the city would have to tally receipts, and that it was on environmental control to be able to do that, and that the board did not have the capacity to do such things.
So the Environmental Control Board adjudicates citations. We offer hearings to people who wish to contest them. As far as proving the underlying violation, that's up to the issuing agency to do, and the hearing officers that work at the Environmental Control Board are making a determination if enough evidence has been shown to determine that there was or was not a violation. So the issuing agency would have to do whatever is necessary to meet the burden, which is beyond preponderance of the evidence, so a civil burden, and they would have to present that evidence to the ECB. The ECB is just making a determination if enough evidence has been provided to show a violation.
Okay, I think that clears that up for me. I appreciate that. I have a question that's kind of waste removal, but also horticultural. I know, and we've been talking a good bit about the Innovation Fund, and I know that we've had great success with Camp Small, that citizens can drop off leaf waste there and take composted waste from there at no charge. But my understanding is that presently the city's leaf collection program is just basically picking it up as regular solid waste, and that all of the leaves that are being disposed of at households around the city are just being burned in the incinerator, while other surrounding jurisdictions like Montgomery County and Baltimore County have a waste to wealth kind of program for these kind of things. I guess, does horticulture have an opinion on what we could be doing with these things instead? Is there an expansion that might be possible here with the Innovation Fund to be able to do this in more locations? I know that we've had problems in the past where too many leaves were gathered in one place and it became an untenable kind of mess. Can anybody talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, if I could just correct the first part of your statement, the Waste to Wealth initiative is reutilizing wood waste from our forestry division.
Okay.
So it's not citizens bringing bags of leaves in.
Okay.
Okay, and it's, you know, branches, chips, logs, so that's waste to wealth. Now, historically.
Am I correct about the other part, though, that people can come and get mulch for free from Camp Small? Is that?
Not exactly. They can purchase mulch if they would like.
Okay.
And if we do get a community group that calls us up and says, I need some mulch for a project, we certainly don't turn them away. We encourage them to show up with a truck, and then we'll load them up. And the rare occasion, we actually will load up a dump truck and take it out there. So we try and be helpful where we can, although we're not funded for it.
Okay.
Historically, years ago, and perhaps John can talk to this, they picked up leaves. We did encourage them to bring them to Camp Small, or we had a location in Leakin Park. They were in plastic bags. The leaves would sit there. The bags would have to be opened up for them to be able to start decomposing. Occasionally, we would bring inmates in to let them rip open all the bags. And we did have piles of legacy leaf mold that we called it. I don't
3
really.
acres of it, as I understand.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any of that left. There is a pile out in Gwynns Falls, Leakin Park, but I don't believe we're continuing to accept leaves because we didn't have a program to handle them.
I would just have to agree.
Okay.
So presently, we're burning our leaves.
That's correct. We have a special leaf collection throughout leaf season, and yes, we are actually taking those leaves to the incinerator.
Does horticulture have an opinion about something else that we might be able to do with these?
Further back than Bill was speaking of, we did compost them at Camp Small, but I believe it was only the leaves out of the park system just because of the capacity. It's possible, but it's a bigger undertaking than you might think at first glance. It's a matter of collecting them without debris. No matter how we collected them, who collected them, there was debris involved. Bags, rocks, sticks, regular trash, and someone has to deal with that on the collection end. And then the piles have to be turned periodically to keep good oxygen movement for proper composting. But it turns out a great product. It was a great product when we had it, but it required resources that are no longer available in the Parks Bureau.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Pinkett.
I had a quick question for the ECB. Ms. Wood, can you tell me how much money and staff is committed to Be More Beautiful?
The money for the actual program is under DPW. The money that ECB is spending is in personnel. So I'm doing a lot of the work and overseeing the program, and my salary has remained the same. And I have a community liaison that I brought on to do community outreach, and she has taken this on as part of her role, and she was already employed through the ECB before this became our program.
Okay. So you said the money for it is under DPW?
It is. It was always under DPW, under Clean Core, and it was pulled back into city control instead of nonprofit control, and it remains in DPW's budget.
I know we're not on DPW, but when I looked at DPW under anti-litter campaign, it looked like it had 0 committed. So is it coming from another source?
Councilman, there was funding appropriated, I believe it was fiscal 16 for Clean Core, and there was a contract with a nonprofit that didn't work out, so most of the money was returned to the city, and that's the funding that we've been using this year for the Clean Core program.
So it is coming from DPW, or it's coming from some other source?
DPW is managing that program.
But they're just not calling it an anti-litter campaign?
Right.
What are we calling it?
Clean Core.
I mean, so I can look in here in this budget book and find Clean Core?
Well, the funding that we recovered from the previous appropriation is expected to last us through fiscal 18.
So how much is that?
That was the information I received from the mayor's office.
How much money is that?
It's about 150,000.
So,
I can get you the specific amount.
so in a city the size of Baltimore, we're only using $150,000 total in anti-litter?
This is a largely volunteer program, so it's an effort to coordinate volunteers.
No, that just seems like an insufficient amount of money to change behaviors in our community.
Yeah, the anti-litter campaign was part of the fiscal 17 adopted budget, but that was one of the items that was transferred to fund after-school programs.
Okay. Yeah, we might want to rethink that. Thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions for the ECB or Rec and Parks? Councilman Stokes.
This is probably for Mr. Chambers or Mr. Rudy about your recycling. Can you give this? Are you already?
I'm sorry, for Environmental Control Board or Rec and Parks.
Oh, that's DPW.
ECB or Rec and Parks, one more time. Anyone? Okay, Rebecca, I just wanted to say thank you. It is an absolute pleasure to work with you. Your responsiveness is off the chart fantastic. We've been joined by Councilman Henry. Rec and Parks and ECB, if you could kindly stick around until 10:30. Right now it's 10:05, and we're going to get into the DPW portion unless Councilman Dorsey has.
Just one more question. I really want to get some clarification on whose responsibility it is to collect trash in parks. And if it differs from place to place, because I seem to have an awfully hard time having illegal dumping collected from park space, as well as even having cans collected regularly and on time from park space, particularly around playfields.
Okay. It's Recreation and Parks' responsibility to pick the litter up off the ground and put it into the can. It's DPW's responsibility to empty the cans on a routine basis. It's Recreation and Parks' responsibility to clean up after illegal dumping, although DPW jumps in and gives us a hand when requested.
That is correct. We're responsible for servicing the cans Monday through Saturday, once a day at all the parks.
And is a distinction drawn when dumped matter is organic in nature, like branches and wood? Does that actually get disposed of? I mean, I see that kind of stuff left along the sides of parks, and maybe a blind eye is turned to it because it's not a television.
No, we pick up any dumping when it's directed to us. We're responsible for it, whether it's a television or a log or a pile of leaves.
Okay. Councilman Henry has a follow-up.
Yeah, good morning. Does the picking up of cans in parks also extend to cans for rec centers? And the reason I ask is I've got a rec center at Dewey's where right now they're only getting pickup of the can out in front of their building when trash is collected in that neighborhood. And they don't seem to have a separate budget line for their own dumpster or anything like that. Is it possible to get their corner can, which is essentially their Rec and Parks trash, is it possible to get that picked up more often?
Well, they're entitled to curbside collection, so if they put their trash out on the trash day for that particular area, we will service them.
That's what they're getting. That's what I'm saying.
So you're saying they need something in
I'm
addition
saying
to
that they have activities going on every day, and they've got the trash load of a facility that has dozens of kids coming in every day, and that's a little bit more than a house in terms of they probably need more trash collection than the regular residential for that neighborhood.
Definitely a discussion, something we can talk about to kind of come up with a strategy.
But but in terms of policy-wise, like how do rec centers across the city have their trash collected? Are they expected to have dumpsters? Are they expected to just put their trash out for curbside collection?
As far as I'm concerned, we are responsible for the curbside collection piece of it. If there's additional trash, would defer that to Rec and Parks.
Okay. Anyone else for ECB or Rec and Parks? Rec and Parks. Councilman Stokes.
For Service 648, could you walk us through the expenditures, because there are reductions under the line item titled Rec Centers, but an increase under the line item. Hold up. For Service 648, please walk us through the expenditures, because there are reductions under individual rec centers, but an increase under the line item titled Rec Centers. Could you explain the reasoning behind the change? That's Service 648.
Oh, we're actually going to have Rec and Parks.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Councilman. We're going to have Rec and Parks back in, I think, later this evening. And Councilman, that'll be from 8:30 to 9:30 tonight. Okay. Councilman Scott. Yep, we're ready for DPW.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chow, my questions are about Service 661, public right-of-way cleaning. So if you look at it, on your for your performance measure, you have a target of 130,000 miles swept, and you had an actual of 111,000 in fiscal 16, and a target of 120 for 17. How are we verifying the lane miles that are swept?
I mean, whenever the broom is put down in terms of sweeping from the truck, the mileage is being tracked through the software program.
So do we track it by GPS as well?
No, we don't. I mean, we know from locality where the trucks are, but we're not using GPS to route the sweeping route. Let's put it that way.
So I asked that question because despite all of Mr. Chalmers' efforts, about 98% of my district never sees street sweeping. So for me, and I know that the same is the same for Councilman Dorsey and for Councilman Burnett and pretty much anybody who's on the outskirts of the city. So for us, we find it hard to see why we should, one, say we have citywide street sweeping, because we don't, and two, why we should keep allocating money for this service that our taxpayers are paying for, but they never get. Mr. Chalmers, he has tried almost everything I can imagine to get the crews to actually go to all the streets and follow the routes, including having me ride with them and show them exactly where they should go. But once he's not paying attention, they just stop doing it. And if we don't have GPS on the trucks, there's no way. I can set my clock today to know that there are streets that I'm going to get complaints that I'm going to have to send to Mr. Chalmers and Yvonne about, that they just don't sweep unless someone complains. So for me, Mr. Chow, it has to be a better way to track that, right? Because, yeah, we can sweep 111,000 lane miles, but if they're happening in the same places that street sweeping has always happened, then we're wasting our time. How can you tell me how we're going to improve citywide street sweeping in the areas that are not accustomed to having street sweeping, on those places that border the county, on those neighborhoods that are so far off the beating path that no one knows where they are, including the route drivers?
Okay, so let me reiterate and clarify. We do on the truck itself. We have the trackers on the truck itself, so we know where the truck's been. But we are not using GPS to proactively route the trucks. That's what I meant. Now, the fact that there are several factors. One factor is being, in the past, our trucks has been old and they're breaking down a lot. That we never have enough trucks on the daily basis in order to sweep all the routes that we want to sweep. We certainly come a long way. We got a number of new trucks that coming in. And then that's one issue we try to address. Second issue is that we continue to lose our sweeper drivers as they come in and they stay short term and they move on. Because the requirement in terms of the CDL license and so on and all that. So that means we're constantly training folks and so on and all that. And the third, I would say, by us breaking into quadrants, it would provide a better, meaning each of the quadrant is now led by a manager. So that manager is responsible for that that footprint. So that means everything happening or not happening within that geographic footprint, that person is responsible for it. So we try to be a little bit more, certainly be more proactive in terms of managing, supervising, and certainly the ever revolving door at the supervisory level personnel. The turnover is huge, and in solid waste, and at the same time, it takes a while to bring new folks on board, and then we got to train them and all that. So, I understand your point about sort of the county-city borderline and why aren't we there and all that. And I certainly will have a conversation with Mr. Chalmers. It's not our intent to avoid that area, but we certainly need to have perhaps provide better supervision, follow up through, certainly with our new quadrant set up. Hopefully to improve the services that we provide to all the districts.
Can you say again? Why do you say we lose a lot of the drivers? I couldn't hear the microphone.
The CDL license.
Oh, they can't keep the requirements.
Yes.
Also, just a follow up: are a lot of those drivers, are they DPW employees or are they temporary employees?
They are DPW employees. Only permanent employee can get so-called the yellow car to drive.
And I actually spoke with Mr. Chalmers about this. I think that what would help in the future, if we're able to figure out a way to match drivers who are as we're hiring them. If we're hiring a guy with a CDL from Northwest Baltimore, then we should put them on a route in an area that they're familiar in, because we can say that we're tracking. The truth is it's not happening for us. It's just simply not happening. It's the same streets over and over and over and over again. And I can almost understand some of the streets that are so far removed, but when it's the main roads, it's just unacceptable for that to be happening.
Understand.
Mr. Chair, I'm done for now.
Councilman Burnett.
So I'd actually like to continue on that topic and just kind of double down. Actually, my block has been one of those streets. There was an issue with the signage change that took place with the time, and apparently that didn't coordinate with the changes to the routes. So on my block and several other blocks, we have signage that says one thing, but the street sweeper never comes, and it happened for almost over a month where the sweeper wasn't coming, and then we were able to dig down and find out that there was a discrepancy. And so I have to wonder if that's happening on my street and several others in my neighborhood. Is this something that you're hearing citywide?
Well, first of all, let me apologize for that happening, and what would turn out is my understanding that is under the expanded sort of program in the Central District, and we're working with DOT in terms of getting these new signs made up and so on and all that. Some of the signs went up incorrectly, so we had to basically regroup and readdress that and correct that circumstances.
Do you know the timetable to have that addressed?
It should have been taken care already. Yeah.
Work in progress.
I mean, they have a contractor working on this. So basically, the idea is that some of the signs already been put up, and what we don't want to happen is to spend more money to take them down. So what we're doing is actually blanking them, and then later on, when we can reshuffle them as required.
Okay. So I haven't seen that on mine. Like I said, it's literally on the other side of my house. It hasn't been happening, and my neighbors are pretty angry because the councilman's block isn't getting street sweep, and they have a 7 a.m. Time, so it's even more frustrating for folks to get up at 7 o'clock. And
yeah, let me address this in the general terms. And solid waste, there's a lot of work happening on the daily basis.
Sure.
And what we basically are doing is just chasing after 311 tickets and so on, all that. That's where a lot of reactionary work is happening. And a part of the strategy in breaking into quadrants really is to try to convert just chasing after and putting fire out to managing the workload. So that means, settling the quadrant is the first step, increasing what we call the analyst's capabilities within each of the quadrant to proactively looking at. So for example, even though we track where the sweeper's been, but again, someone has to go onto the system, actually literally look at it, rather than the system alerting us as, well, this truck is off route or something like that. We don't have a proactive program, so that requires someone's literally going to watch this from a quality assurances perspective. That is the notion where we are heading towards. But getting them into quadrant is the first step. We're looking at the number of staff, the staff complement, the competencies, and so on. All that is going to be shaping up in the coming months and years.
Okay. And is this something that you've worked with Mr. Klein on?
Absolutely.
About? Okay.
And we constantly beat him up on getting more money, but
Yeah, again, I know
struggling.
the expansion is definitely complex, but whatever. Yeah, I was gonna say the innovation fund could be an opportunity for that, because it sounds like something that could be an easy fix with better tracking and software, especially when we just look at the line item. I mean, it's $21 million approximately for this service. And if it's not happening, I mean, that's a significant amount of money when we talk about after schools and, a lot of the things that we've been debating about with finance. This could be, it seems like an easy fix.
Yeah, I mean, street sweeping is still, it's not perfect yet. And we still have issues with people not moving their cars. We recognize that we're going to probably need to put more signages up and all that. All those requires budget. And so we don't have a pile of money that we can literally just blanket the city to the standard that we wanted to do. It's rolled out over time. We'll continue to budget that as we expand. And it's going to take a bit of time.
So the other one, I had a bunch of questions, but I'll stop after this one and let my colleagues talk. There was one of your metrics, 661 public right-of-way, so still on this cleaning issue. Looks like 61% of the alley cleaning service requests are closed on time. And that is up from the previous year, but definitely way off target for the goals that have been set. Is there work being done to try and close that gap?
What the program number you said?
So service number 661 says percentage of alley cleaning service requests closed on time. In fiscal year 15, it was 58%. In 16, it was 61%. What are some of the barriers to closing out those requests at a much higher rate than 61%?
I mean, again, to go back to the thing I said earlier, is the staffing is an issue for us. And at the same time, and I sort of looking at into the future in terms of what we wanted to do. The part of the reason why we went to the quadrant setup is to provide what we call the one-stop shop. So that means when the crew gets there, if they see things in the alleys and all that, we can literally take care of it. I mean, that is the strategy we want working towards, and to increase this number. We recognize in the past, it's when a boarding crew gets there, but they see stuff in the alley, they don't necessarily would do the work because they have to refer to the right crew. So you go through another chain, which slows down, it's very inefficient, and so on and all that. So the quadrant, long term, is to become multitask and multi-skilled workforce to drive these percentages and performance up.
So on that note, I saw on service 670, contractual services is a $23 million budget. What are some of the things that if you're saying that there's staffing issues, this seems like a pretty significant expense for contractual services. What are some of those? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you're a large agency, so what are some of the things that are being contracted out that either could be done in-house more efficiently or to supplement the workers that you have?
I mean, that assessment I mean, we literally conducting that type of analysis on a daily basis. And what we really try to drill down to is what we call a core. What's our core responsibilities? And what are considered non-core? And non-core, perhaps we can contract that out. But I would tell you, I share the same sentiment, perhaps that we contract out too many things. And some of the things that we ought to be able to do ourselves. So that assessment has to continue. The realignment is continuing. We don't have, it's not something that can be accomplished over time. That means in order to bring it back in-house, for example, one, we need the people, and two, we need the people with the skill set. That means we got to put the training in place and all that. So there's a lot of ancillary stuff that has to come into play, ultimately getting to that, if something that we want to bring in-house versus let it contract that out. And certain things that deserve to be continued to contract out, certainly, but that assessment is continuing.
So yeah, I was asking that because one of my constituents raised the idea that there's because you guys do mowing of properties. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So one of the frustrations that in a lot of calls we get, especially this time of year, high grass and weeds,
Yep.
And the significant amount of time it takes to mow the properties. And obviously, I know there's different agencies at play here. But is there an opportunity for the contracting out of those type of services where you just don't have the staffing to maintain the mowing, but possibly partnering with the local, similarly to what we do with snow removal, where we contract out for the ice removal? Is there a possibility of doing some of that to decrease the amount of time that high grass and weeds and maintenance isn't happening?
Yeah. So the mowing specifically, we do contract out, or combination of our in-house crew as well as outside contractor. Traditionally, what we have been giving the contractor is what we call it more straightforward type of cutting. Just go in there and cut it and so on and all that. We leave the so-called the harder ones, that the larger lots that requires cleaning first before it can be mowed, and to our own crews. And we are actually assessing that strategy, but we do the combination of our internal resources as well as external contractor to help shape the peaks.
Okay. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Pinkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chow, I had my first question related to street sweeping again, because you mentioned illegally parked cars. Is there a measure for the streets that are not swept due to cars being parked? I mean, so like when a driver drives up, does he report it that he or she was unable to sweep that particular street because of cars being illegally parked?
Okay, so the expanded street sweeping program, we expanded into the 4 quadrants outside of the central district. And those quadrants are currently still on a voluntary basis. That means we don't actually have signs up there that we can actually enforce. So what we do is we're working in concert with neighborhoods, leaderships, and so on and all that, and working in partnership with them. And when it comes to the street sweeping days, for example, they will get these portable, disposable signs, put them in the front lawn to help encourage folks not to park along the side that we're going to be sweeping. But it's still, again, it's on a volunteer basis. But the central district, where our signage is, and there are enforcement that associated with that. There's the fines involved and so on and all that. But the key is what our original thought when we rolled out the street sweeping is that it's something that you all have mentioned earlier about the culture change. And it's understanding having enforcement, having signs to enforce is a mean to get people to be in compliance. But at the same time, if we can culturally change the idea of the people that they want their street clean and being swept, and if they voluntarily recognize in the days that they need to move the vehicles, even though it's inconvenient, I mean, that will give us sustainability over long haul. So that's why when we first pushed out, we didn't wait for the budget to catch up in order to put the signs out there in the quadrants. We went ahead and did it on a volunteer basis, did the community outreach, continued to work with the community leaderships and so on, all that. try to change the culture setting. Now, we do recognize certain areas, however, where is that required. It's just because busy is a business district, perhaps out about, that requires signage and all that. We're working them into the budget. So this is really what I call a multifaceted, multi-phase approach, because we don't have tens of millions of dollars to manufacture these signs and get them all up at one time.
Okay. Well, I want to move on, but I think what I was getting to is that in the areas where there is enforcement, where
should be enforced.
You leave in the morning and know there's going to be street sweeping, you come back and you can tell up and down the block where cars were parked because obviously the truck is,
Yep.
making this. Does the driver call anybody to say, I am unable to do my job consistently on this block because no one is enforcing the no parking during that time?
The drivers are not themselves, because we want them to pay attention to what they're doing, but the supervisors do follow up, should make that kind of communication with DOT, enforcement officers. That's where it can work together.
Okay. I'll leave it alone. My next question was related to Service 664, where we have, I guess there's a state goal of 35% of for waste tonnage being diverted away from the landfill. And I think that we achieve like 22%. Can you speak to what we're doing to get in compliance?
You're talking about recycling, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, that's the education, that's the culture change, and get people to become embracing recyclings and so on, all that. I mean, it's a huge challenge for us. We certainly want people to recycle as much as they can, which will bring less trash to the landfill, for nothing else, to help prolong the life of the expectancy of the landfill ourselves.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Because you've mentioned culture change twice, but unless I'm mistaken, we're only committing $150,000 to anti-litter type campaigns. So is there some other money that we're committing? Because
yeah, I mean, the $150,000 is the old, what I call the Clean Core, and which now associated with the Be More Beautiful campaign. At the same time, through our own administration, on the cost side, our community liaisons and others continue to go out into the community. We go to the schools and all that. So those are things that we do as a part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. It's just called administrative support, and that we're pushing out. But that pot of money, the $150,000, is dedicated for that one program and for the program's rollout and so on, all that. That's the reason why that was a line item by itself. The others are, it's all embedded in our operation.
Okay. Got it. It'd be nice, and I understand what you're saying now. Those services are, they're in here, but it's just not reflected.
Yeah,
separated
it's
out.
all part of the.
And the only reason I bring it up because we're not going to, solve the city's trash problems with just, the work of, Mr. Chalmers and his team. I mean, there's going to have to be, like you said, it's going to have to be a culture change. And so I just believe we got to invest more into changing the mindset of people, so that, I was hoping, when you were talking about culture change, you wouldn't be talking about somebody waking up early enough to move their car across the street, but somebody waking up early enough to sweep their sidewalk themselves. That would be a culture change.
Yeah.
My last question is, do we recycle styrofoam?
I don't know if it
Yes, we do.
Styrofoam, because I think, once again, education, I think most people would believe that you can't recycle styrofoam, and so because you can't put it in the
But you can't put it in your single stream recycling. We do have styrofoam recycling at the Northwest Sisson Street citizen drop-off location. So they can come in there Monday through Saturday from 7 to 5 and drop off their styrofoam recycling. It is not part of the curbside recycling program, though.
So why not? Why isn't it a part of the curbside recycling?
I'm going to bring the recycling experts up here now.
The single stream curbside recycling contract is with Waste Management. All single stream recycling goes to Kit Kat Road where there's a MRF, and everything is separated. Waste Management does not accept styrofoam. They can't market it. We have a separate MOU with DART. DART Corporation has a container at Sisson Street where people can bring in the styrofoam. Waste Management doesn't process styrofoam. Only DART does. And last year we did 8,000 pounds of styrofoam through Sisson Street. So that's why you can't put it out curbside.
So are there no contractors that do both? Do what we currently recycle plus styrofoam?
There's not a contractor that would take it curbside. Because when you take the single stream to the MRF, the material recovery facility, there's a sorting, the whole sorting machine. You can't sort the styrofoam out from the single stream. That's why it's got to be source separated. And source separated means that people have to bring it to one place and it's collected right there.
Okay.
There's not a contractor in the area that would take it in the curbside.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. I've met with some of the companies that are talking about doing something different in terms of recycling with the styrofoam, because they say it can be recycled, and they're thinking about doing some receptacles that they're going to put in different locations. I don't know if they talked to you yet.
Not yet.
But they was in
Not
here
yet.
talking
We'll
to me.
certainly let us know. We can
Okay.
certainly reach out.
All right, that was DART.
Okay, it was dark.
Okay?
Got it.
I just want you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Pinkett, you good?
Yes, thank you.
Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you. How many mechanical street sweepers do we have? I know that we have 28 people to operate them, operators, but actual street sweeping machines.
About what, 35?
We asked it?
So we have total in the Bureau itself 40. That means 37 for street sweeping purposes. 3 is designated at the landfill.
And what is the value of them?
Excuse me?
What is the value of them? Or how much do they cost?
290,000.
And what is their expected life and maintenance costs over that life?
7 to 10 years.
10 years?
7 to 10.
7 to
7
10.
to 10 years. And what do we have in maintenance of them over that period? What is the cost of maintenance on those vehicles over the life?
Well, I mean, we can get you that number. I mean, the fleet tracks Department of General Services. The fleet, they track all these data per vehicle. We can certainly provide that data to you. Certainly, that's part of the reason why we went to renew many of the older, long past the 10-year, perhaps even 15 years old, these old sweepers. We can in them out of the system because it's not cost effective to continue to maintain them.
And how long have we been using mechanical street sweepers?
As far as I can.
As far as I can remember, at least 20, 25 years.
On the scale that we are at present, no. We've been steadily kind of expanding this.
No, we did. We've always had 37 sweepers in the fleet for mechanical street sweeping, as far as I go back, and that's about 25 years.
What was our immediate predecessor to using them for this purpose, or did we just not clean streets?
So the program prior to what we currently have now, it was, residents would call in, they would put in a petition, they would request to have their street swept, and street sweeping was kind of spotty throughout the city. That's how the process, and that's how they were sweeping.
So in other words, neighborhoods that wants their street to be swept, they had to petition to us, And then so that means throughout the city, it could be a street here, a street there. You know, it's very inefficient. We're basically sending trucks and sweepers out there about until last couple of years, we went to the citywide street sweeping that started connecting all the routes that you no longer had to petition. And then of course, the central district is always being swept. But then we're expanding that in terms of footprints.
I'm just, especially because we have so little money, it's $150,000 dedicated to anti-litter, and that, I mean, that really is about a culture shift. I'm interested in the potential impacts of fewer machines on the street and more people on the street physically doing the cleaning up of the streets, and if that could have a symbiotic kind of, you know, that if that could assist more in the culture shift than seeing machines come down the street that seem ineffective to many. And so I'm wondering why we choose to use these machines at all instead of people out on the street sweeping the old-fashioned way. And I hear an awful lot of people.
The hokey man?
Yeah, the hokey man. I hear an awful lot of people thinking that that would be a better alternative, especially considering the number of jobs that that could create for the cost of these machines.
So I heard the word hokey man, and let's put it this way. You know, the city is a large city. We're not a small footprint. In order to go back to the, I call it the 19th century technology of using human beings, go on there, literally walk every route, every street, every side of the street, and picking up trash is not going to be very as efficient. Now, I do recognize that we need to leverage technology when it's appropriate, but at the same time leverage the human resources appropriately as well. Now, the areas, certainly our sweepers cannot get on the curb and get on the grassy area to pick up the litters, loose litters in the grassy area. That's where the hokey man and or individuals as such that could be very helpful in that. So it's really the combination strategy. The truck is going to have to stay on pavement, but off the pavement, the rest of the city is equally dirty off the pavement. In the alleys, in the grassy areas, in the woods, and all that, that requires people actually getting in there to do it. So I think the combination approach is the right approach. Now, why we have so many sweepers in the fleet, and certainly that's something that we need to look at. But part of the reason is that we need 28 sweepers on a day-to-day basis, but then not in the past because we are lacking our, what we call it, the proactive replacement program for our sweepers. So we have more trucks broken down than actually being used on a daily basis. Until only recent years, the city beginning to put money in towards upgrading and renewing these sweepers to a much younger fleet that we have now. So do we really need 40 now? And if we can get the commitment, sort of from a budgetary standpoint, that we will keep our sweepers between the age of 7 and 10, and we proactively replacing them as needed, maybe we can reduce the number of sweepers and put that money elsewhere to do that. But until that happens, I mean, we got what we got.
So how many sweepers do we have actively usable at present, if not 37?
I mean, we have 28 on the street every day. You know, so how many?
So the availability is good. We have 28 on the street. You still have to allow for vehicles to be shopped for routine maintenance, breakdowns. So you have to have a surplus. You know, we have 28 routes. So if you have 28 routes, you have to have backup vehicles for that. So that's why we currently have 37.
And do these sweepers have to be driven to the incinerator like the way a regular dump truck does?
Mechanical street sweepers use the Northwest Transfer Station to discharge their loads.
And then we haul it from the transfer station to the landfill.
If I could, I would like to know the cost, the total cost for each of these vehicles over its life, the cost of the vehicle and all associated maintenance, as well as, I guess, maybe the cost of, no, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
You got it. You got this question. Okay. Councilwoman Sneed. I'm sorry. Yeah, that would be question 49.
That was for the, I think it's to Councilwoman Sharon Middleton, because my question was for the Environmental Control Board. I missed
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Councilwoman Middleton.
Thank you. Is it afternoon yet? No, still morning. First, I want to give just, public service is such a challenging, hard job and in this city. And I want to give kudos to John Chalmers for through the transition and stepping in. And he is clearly a excellent example of a wonderful career path. So I just want to give kudos, and I think that he is in a wonderful position, and I hope he can stay in that position. And then I also want to give a shout out to Kedrick McEntee, that has just been a great liaison, at least in my area, and has just been doing a wonderful job. And another example, I think he was on the youth commission and kind of moved up. And then I want to move on. I guess, I had been listening to like the education piece and how, it takes the community working with Public Works as far as, the trash problems in the city. And I went back and was thinking that I think that one of the things that really set back the city was when we started going through the introducing recycling, and we took away that trash day. And I personally think that if we had kept the 2-day trash day and then added the recycling until all that is a part of the education piece for the city. We needed that 2 trash day to, acclimate the residents in learning the process of recycling. It was just one of those days was just abruptly stopped, and we added the recycling. And, this is part of the problems that we're dealing with. I was listening to the dialogue with the street sweeping, and, I noticed I remember some of the signage was taken away, and I know that DPW had worked hard to try to put back some of the problems with the signage, and you probably can't say this, but I can. I know the stumbling block was with transportation, making the signs and trying to put them back. And, again, that's a part, that seems to be some of the problems, partnerships with transportation and some of the other agencies, just trying to figure out, how to work together, and because all of you play a certain role in cleaning up the city. And, I'll throw housing in there as well. You want to make a comment so far of what I just said?
Well, first of all, I look at all the other agencies as a partner to us in terms of what we want to accomplish. And I would tell you, everyone has the best intention. But sometimes, I guess, when you are in the weeds and try to figure out all the moving parts and all that, sometimes mishaps or missteps takes place. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, that we were able to quickly discover the signage was incorrectly installed, and we actually huddled with DOT and all that, and through collaborations, we come up with a game plan and trying to get them corrected, and at the same time try to roll them out accordingly, properly, and all that. So I would say, in the grand, big picture perspective, I think the partnership is great. But certainly on the day-to-day basis, there are always going to be issues that happens. And then the key is to stay focused and work together.
In this education piece, I know you have a process for how communities get dumpsters. I think it's 4 times a year. And so are you going to purchase any new dumpsters so we can, I'm feeling communities are asking more, and I know I think they have an opportunity for 4 times a year. I think it should increase to 5 times a year now and add more dumpsters. Is there funds to increase the dumpster use?
So this wonderful John Chalmers just told me that we're getting 50 additional dumpsters.
Okay, so is that enough to maybe increase the associations to have 5 times a year instead of 4? Or you're...
Yeah, I mean, it really comes
have
down
discussion.
to, let's put it this way, I think from the perspective of, I think we all have the same desire to get the city cleaned up. At the same time, there's that resources requirement. Yeah, even though we might have additional dumpsters, but do we have enough personnel to rotate them through? But certainly, because a lot of these activities happens on the weekends, that means we're gonna bring people in on overtimes, or put them on a shift change. And certainly we got to work with the union on that, from that perspective, and so no one is being shortchanged and all that. So that's become the struggle that we have. It really comes down to, do we have enough resources to accomplish everything we want to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly if I can help it, I would love to have a body on every street out there to making sure the streets are clean. But that's not, we don't have the budget for that purpose, and that's the reason why we're saying we as a department, along with our other partner agencies, can do everything that we do. But the key ingredients really is the citizens. The citizens has to do their part. That means if the gun wrapper don't end up on the street, that means they put it in the trash can, we never have to spend the money and the resource to pick it up and then get it disposed of it. So that true partnership has to happen. And I think in recent years, and there's a lot of focus being spent towards educating our citizens out there, the old Clean Corp, and now the Be More Beautiful strategy, and all that is with the higher hope and the vision of having our citizens embrace and have pride in the city that they live in there, being clean, being safe. And it's something that we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to push and push, but in the meantime, we recognize we as a department has to fill in the gaps as best as we can under the resource that we have in the best efficient way that we could.
And you also have a very important department, and I want to thank you for keeping and maintaining, I think, at least one apprenticeship program. I think that's in water and wastewater. And as I mentioned to transportation, and right now, I think you're the only apprenticeship so far, that one program that's still going. And we kind of mentioned a little earlier, my colleagues, about, and you mentioned too, training, you need CDL drivers. Some of the other agency had mentioned shortages. Human resources we had yesterday had mentioned some of the problems they have in hiring. And I think you really need to reinvestigate some of these other jobs and open up more apprenticeships. My colleague, Councilman Dorsey, down at the end had mentioned, you having people help out with the cleanup and so on. I know that DPW had some other wonderful apprenticeship programs, and I think they should open back up. I had mentioned with the Labor Commissioner yesterday, I remember when the Labor Commissioner's office was very involved, and I think the apprenticeship system was through them and Human Resources, and somehow it's got, because of all the things that the Mayor's Office of Employment is involved in, apprenticeship was kind of, you know, I'm feeling they just don't have time, not to be negative, but they're on other things like Youth Works. I feel that it should go back, and I think DPW should be the one to continue to take the lead in other apprenticeships, because you still have that connection also with the state apprenticeship system to get that universal certificate. It's just a win-win for not just the city, but for your department. And it would help alleviate some of the contracting out problems. I just think it's a savings for the city. And as you know, too, you worked heavily in the cleanup of the riot or unrest that happened, and you saw the need for our young people to go follow a career path. You know, it's a lost generation right out of high school that do not have skills, and apprenticeship is just out there. You want to comment on that?
Sure. First of all, we embrace apprenticeship program along with other programs that we have put in place in recent years. First of all, we recognize there is a generation of folks that needs job, and the reality that we, as a department, we have jobs, because many of our folks are near retirement or way past their retirement age already, and we know the needs is there. That's part aside from the apprenticeship program, which we slowed down a few years ago just to redirect and strengthen it. So now we're coming back in a big way. At the same time, on top of it, we rolled out what we call the water mentorship program that I believe at the very first session of the new council, the gentleman came in from the water mentorship program. This is for folks that is between age 18 and 23, and basically introducing to water and wastewater field, the water treatment. I mean, the jobs is not gonna strike you $1 million quickly, but it's a very noble job. It's a very steady job. It's a very much needed job we as a society. But I think in the grand scheme of things, what we're trying to do is create career ladders. I mean, that's what really boiled down to. Unfortunately, in the past, we may get people coming as a labor. And then the question is that, well, where do you go from there? And you mentioned Chalmers. Mr. Chalmers is a good example. He has an excellent career path. You know, so you're starting at the entry level, and then you learn over time the multifaceted in terms of our operation, get a much more in-depth, more experience. But having a very clear career ladder for the people come joining us will help us retain them and keep them interested, keep them motivated. And so that's what we're working on towards. I mean, we started with certainly on the water side, you know, our call center agents, that we're looking at trainee and then become customer service agent 1, 2, and 3, and eventually you can excel up to the division levels and all that. So I would say, you know, we recognize the need is there as a department in terms of the filling the gap for the people who need to come in to fill the job. At the same time, we also recognize we as a department, as part of the city agency, we need to do our part to help our citizens out there to give them sort of a path to succeed. So, and we bring those two things together. On top of it, we bring our vendors to the table as well. And so for example, our water mentorship program is now being recognized nationally. I mean, many of the other utilities and cities and townships are reaching out to us and try to understand how we actually do what we do, try to attract it between the age and 23, what the program looks like, what the curriculum looks like, and all that. So we have a lot to share because we have been very, very busy in recent years. The transformation is tremendous, but I think if you're walking into a time zone, you're going back 5, 6 years ago, and then hurry to today's, you'll see a huge change. But on the day-to-day basis, the subtle moves, we living in it, we might not recognize. But I would tell you, nationally, people from the outside looking at the things we do as a department, they are they are really admiring the things that we are doing. So we as a city should be very proud of, but we are going to continue to push the envelope to get better.
Well, thank you, because Baltimore, and I can't say it enough, Baltimore City was the first government apprenticeship program in this country, so that speaks volumes in itself. And then just one last thing, glass recycling, are there plans to do that separately, or tell me about what's the future with glass?
You know, that's why I bring the expert up again.
All right.
Morning.
Morning.
Glass is very, very, the profitability of glass is negative. What we do with single stream recycling is we have the contract that we have with Waste Management. We have done a sort of every ton of recycling typically that Baltimore City collects. Out of that ton of recycling, there are percentages of what we determine each of those tons represent. 15% of every ton of recycling collected in Baltimore City consists of glass. Unfortunately, the market for glass is actually almost in the negative numbers, so we're really not making any money from glass. But we still get Waste Management to collect it because it's part of the contract. We don't have any plans to collect it separately. It's actually part of the single stream, so we're going to continue to collect it in the single stream contract. But as far as the profitability, when you look at the different commodities in the single stream recycling, each of those commodities, every month we look at the New York commodity price for them. So for like aluminum's gone for like $600 a ton now. Unfortunately, a ton of Baltimore City recycling is only 0.03% of aluminum. Mixed paper has been going up in price, so every 68.5% of a ton of Baltimore City recycling is paper. So each one of those commodities has a price, and they change every month. The price for plastics have plummeted in the past couple years because the price of oil has plummeted from $110 a barrel to about like $55, $52 a barrel now. So plastic recycling is not as profitable as it used to be. But each one of those commodities has a market price. There's an aggregate market price per ton of Baltimore City recycling. There's a processing fee Waste Management charges us per ton, and as a result of that, determines what the cost, either we make a profit on a ton or we have to pay. And our last invoice, we had a negative $3 per ton. So we had to pay money to Waste Management for the recycling. But it's still cheaper than disposal cost at the landfill or Bresco. So we're still saving money.
All right. Thank you. I'm finished.
Councilman Bullock.
Mr. Chow, just one quick question. I know we talked before about some of the roll-offs in the communities and folks trying to keep communities clean. One of the complaints that we've gotten, whether it be around the mayor's cleanup or the Afro Clean Block, is that there's nothing in the way of any kind of tools or support for some of these communities outside of bags. Has there been any thought around that, and just your opinion upon that?
We can certainly look into it, but again, comes into a budget issue. So we will take a look at that possibility. But again, it's getting those additional tools and brooms and others. It comes with a cost.
And then when was that discontinued? Because I know that was a practice years ago, and the thought process around discontinuing that.
The question is, why was that practice discontinued? It's because we didn't get the tools back, and each year there's a cost associated with that. We had to, reissue those tools every year. And that was the biggest problem.
Okay, so it might be worth thinking about even some kind of process in terms of recovering those tools, just to make sure it's a more effective process.
Yeah, we got to get a better accountability when we issue to the community. We got to get it back. Otherwise, I guess we're restocking everybody's toolkits.
Director Chow, we're going to ask that you do your presentation next. If you could please keep it to 10 minutes. Mr. Chalmers, I just wanted to, before we move on to the next piece, one, please stick around because I know some of my colleagues have further solid waste questions. But two, I just wanted to thank you publicly You are absolutely fantastic, and your team does a great job. Every time I reach out to you, regardless of what hour of the night it is, you always end up coming through for me, and I really appreciate that, even though I have significant concerns with street sweeping, and that is more of the theory of street sweeping in general, not what you do, but your team is great, so thank you. Director Chow, if you could do your your presentation. Colleagues, it is now 11:04. Our goal is to get this done by 12:30. This presentation focuses mainly on water, wastewater, stormwater. And there are two small pieces to it, public and private energy performance as well as administration. So it sounds like the bulk of our questions are going to be around the water system as well as solid waste. Hopefully we can get done by 12:30. Director Chow, if you could take it away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into a service program 670, which is the administration, the DPW, the water and wastewater. Well, this service provide basically the administrative support to the maintenance division, the customer services, as well as wastewater facilities, environmental services, and others in terms of the efficient management of each of the operations. Now, for program 671, which is water management, in the FY18 budget, we included a net increase about 10 positions to fund new utility installer repairs positions to enhance our response time in our utility maintenance in responding to emergency repairs as well as to the 311 services, simply because the fact that, as I said earlier, our aging infrastructures, even though we have a very proactive program to replacing our aging infrastructures, but it's not fast enough. We are way behind just because due to years of sort of deferment. For program 672, which is water and wastewater consumer services. Now this program it included the program for the, for example, the senior discounts and the low-income assistance, and as well as the stormwater credits program for our citizens. Now we have upgraded our water metering and our billing system, and then the systems went live last October 2016 for Baltimore City, and it's expected that the Baltimore County will come online late in this calendar year, perhaps early next calendar year. Now, implementation of the advanced metering infrastructure, or what we call an AMI, or automated meter reading AMR. Now, AMI is deployed in the city, AMR is deployed in the county. Now, the difference between the two is AMI is a wireless system. That means we can basically gather so-called hourly reads remotely, all of the city meters. The county went to the AMR system, which is a drive-by system. That means they literally drive down the city street in the county, and then the collector will collect the reads as the vehicle moves down. And also the FY18 budget in terms of the customer service, and to improve our customer service, our response time to customer calls, we have increased 20 additional positions to improve that in that particular area. As we roll out the new system, we have a lot of folks calling us, just want to understand what the system does, and at the same time, because it has an online portal, that means their ability to go online and manage in their own accounts. So that takes a bit of holding hands to our citizens out there. So that's the reason why we are increasing additional positions for that purpose. For wastewater management, program 673. Now, certainly this program is the one that supports the consent decree, the sanitary sewer consent decree that went into basically in 2002. Now, as part of this consent decree, the project that many of you perhaps have heard is our Headworks project at the Back River wastewater treatment plant. This Headworks project is basically to correct a hydraulic restriction at the Headworks at the head of the wastewater treatment plant at Back River. which disallowed currently a free fall of the wastewater coming from the collection system into the treatment plant itself. So we literally had to install a large pumping station that is capable of pumping about 800 million gallons on a daily basis. And then also, as part of the consent decree requirement, we are installing two 18 million gallon on-site storage tanks. This to basically to divert the surcharge of the wastewater during high rainfall scenarios, so we will eliminate the sanitary sewer overflow in our system. Now this pumping station, once it's constructed, will basically remove about 80 to 82% of all the sanitary sewer overflow volume in the city. And of course, this pumping station, as large as it is, comes with a hefty price. Estimated cost is well exceeding $400 million. For engineer construction management of water and wastewater for program 675, for the water program, FY18 water capital program is about $358 million in change. Now, in the our CIP, just want to mention a few accomplishments that we have. Then we continue to construct our Guilford reservoirs. Basically, under a order, administrative order, we as a city must convert our open finished water reservoirs to either underground storage facility and or conduct post-treatment. And Guilford finished water reservoir is the one that is being converted from an open air finished water reservoir to a underground storage facility. And we have awarded the contract for the Druid Lake finished water tank. In essence, what we are planning on doing is to convert part of the Druid Lake and leave the rest, the majority of the lake as a lake, but take a very small footprint from the lake itself and basically install 2 underground tanks to basically store and distribute the finished water. Now, in the FY18 priorities, our SCADA single platform upgrade. SCADA system is the automated system, the computer system that actually manages and operate the treatment plants via the pre-installed algorithms in terms of the treatments. Now we have programs, SCADA system of the water system and the wastewater system and the pumping systems, and they're not on the single platform. So one of this SCADA single platform is to bring those 3 separate computer system into a single platform, so allow redundancies as well as cross-trainings. And then, of course, we're spending a good chunk of money, about $40 million in change for the water infrastructure renewal and upgrade. Our goal is to replace 15 miles of water mains in the city on the annual basis, and we certainly are keeping pace with that. Try to get our system replaced within the 100-year cycle. That is the best-in-class strategy. Now, in terms of the wastewater program, our capital program for 2018 amounts to nearly just shy of $400 million. Now, in terms of the accomplishments in FY17, we are continue to fulfill many of the sanitary sewer consent decree projects and rehabilitating our sewer lines by lining and or rehabbing our manhole structures and other things. Now, in terms of the 2018 priorities, we are moving forward with what we call a Patapsco headworks upgrade, as well as the SCADA system I just mentioned of the single platform, as well as the Back River, what we call the egg-shaped digester rehab, which is an anaerobic digester that basically convert the the byproducts, or what we call the sludge from the wastewater treatment, to yield beneficial methanes, which to help generate energies and as well as other things. Now for the program 676, which is the administration, DPW, this program basically provides the leadership and support to all the bureaus and offices within the Public Works Department. And we certainly understand, as we said earlier, the important in terms of focusing on our youth, looking for opportunities through better employment and better education, creating opportunity for youth to join the workforce. I mentioned earlier already about our summer sort of youth work as well as our mentorship program. All these are in the spirit of building better tomorrow for the city and for our citizens. Now this, the budget for this program, part of it is transfer credit from other departments such as DOT and DGS, as well as the utility funds. Regarding to our energy performance, which is program 730, which is the Office of Sustainable Energies, continue not only to managing and looking for ways to reduce our energy footprints as well as energy reliance. We are devoting quite a bit of energy into looking for other innovative ways, looking for alternative energy sources, renewable energy sources, and others. And this program is funded through project fees and service charges, as well as project rebates and others, and it's not being supported by the general fund. That concludes my presentation. I certainly can take any question you might have.
Thank you, Director Chow. Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had a couple questions for you, Director, on these issues. So obviously, we know a lot. We've experienced a lot of challenges with the water billing issue, and I was curious. I didn't see any metrics for closing out water bill complaints. Is that something that your agency tracks? And are there goals in which to do? Obviously the severity can differ between the households, but for example, I've had complaints that have been open and been working with your staff who've been great at trying to resolve these issues, but in some instances it has taken several months, or the constituent is calling us after several weeks of trying to work through the channels, and then they're calling us to say, hey, look, I haven't gotten a response, or this issue hasn't been resolved. Can you help? And then, obviously we escalated and work with the higher level staff. But are there measures or metrics that you use to track from the time that a complaint comes in to when it's closed out? And then if so, what are the goals that have been set for your staff to accomplish those metrics?
Well, certainly, I mean, the opportunity is there as we roll out the new system. By way of example, our old legacy system was not very friendly. It is not technology savvy or whatever, but our new system can track things like this, and we are putting metrics in place. We are, even though we're about 6 months into the rollout, and the program continues to be developed and so on, all that. Many of the incidences that certainly come through your offices and as well as from the mayor's office and or directly to myself, many of the issues are what I call a legacy issues that with the old system. So that means, what we did was when we transfer into the new system, people, even though they may be getting monthly bills, but the legacy system may indicate there's a balance owed. And then so we literally had to look at two systems, try to unthread everything, try to untangle all the mess and try to figure out exactly what the issues are. And so that taking a bit of time. That's part of the reason why we are putting additional 20 folks into the customer service division, just to try to manage the workload needs. But at the same time, timing is everything. And we just went through tax sale. And anytime, aside from just not a new system, a new billing system, just the tax sale itself, things are being very, very busy. And on top of it, in the same time, we have the new billing system rolled out with the tax sale and all that. So there's a lot of costs associated with the phone calls coming just because water billing related. So that means we were swamped for quite a bit, and now the tax sale is behind us, and then we can begin to focusing on. At the same time, we've trained folks so we can be better prepared comes next year, this time. But I would say, what we are unfortunately are dealing with is the legacy-related issues, the things that you can just imagine when you roll out a new system, you discover a lot of things that wasn't correct in the past, and then you now really have to correct them and to get and make sure going forward it runs in a smooth operation, and that's a lot of energy, a lot of resources being taken up. But there are, the reality of what we're dealing with really on a daily basis. It is about legacy billing, legacy balance, and then the reality of it is what we are is that the new system, even though they can tell you based on your hourly usages, unless someone says, well, I know there was a leak, and most of the time, folks, what we call silent leaks through toilets and others, that they may not be aware it's leak. So when they get a big bill or a large bill, they're going to say, I didn't use that much water. So all of a sudden there's a bit of learning curve in terms of, well, something was running in your household. Perhaps it is incidental leaks or permanent leaks that needs to be repaired. So that's actually a lot of those circumstances that we are dealing with, literally walking each citizen's, each account through what is actually happening, help jog their memory in terms of what was happening in their household in the last 30 days, what caused the spikes and all that. That taking a lot of time and energy and effort, and that's part of the reason why we sort of back
so
off.
yeah, I know they're complex, and like I said, I've worked with your staff on several of these kind of really complex issues. But the really what I'm trying to get at is if there's no measurement of time to hold your staff accountable from the time that they get a complaint to when it's a goal set to resolve, or because obviously we know that there's certain types of complaints, right? Some of them are related to leaks, some of them may be on the consumer side, some may be on the city side. Again, I know they're complicated, but the frustration that I'm getting, and I'm sure my colleagues get, is that it sometimes just feels like an open-ended amount of time that people have to deal with these issues. And also some of my constituents have conveyed that they feel like there's a lack of a sense of urgency from some of the billing staff or staff that are working on these issues with people to really try and resolve them as quickly as possible, especially when you have bills that are high enough to push people over the threshold for tax sale. For example, I had one that was obviously an erroneous bill, but it was a $32,000 bill. So for that person to go weeks and weeks without feeling like there was a sense of urgency coming and an actual end in sight, that this will be resolved by this date. Like when you call 311, for example, they say a code enforcement agent will be out within 5 to 7 business days, or that kind of window. Does that kind of thing happen when people call or with these kind of issues?
Well, first of all, if it's a straightforward complaint, it gets resolved very, very quickly. It generally is when it gets into the back and forth. I mean, so we share the record. Here is what's actually happening. The consumer says, no, I don't believe it, and no, I'm not going to pay, and it comes back to us. So that conversation goes back and forth, goes on forever, and then the part of that's the problem that we're dealing with. So when we say, do we have a metric that track what I call a straightforward, here's the issue, we got to resolve. Now we may have the first first-time resolution in terms of what the account says, and then we can literally, the information is relayed back. But the delay, like I said, is the back and forth. So to track this back and forth, that will skew the data in terms of stats, because that's really getting to the human that they say, I just don't believe it. And we can share the physical, hourly charges and the usages. They look at it and says, I don't believe it. It must be something wrong with your system. that actually bogs everybody down, and that slowed the system down. And lots of folks are frustrated as a result of that. Is we want to, there are provisions, there are policy in place to handle a situation like this. But when we're at the stalemate, where we say the system, we trust our system, and this is what the system says, when the consumer says, I don't believe it, I don't want to pay, you're at a stalemate, that conversation just goes on and on and on and on.
Is there technology in place, or is something that you would consider? So, for example, when someone, again, going back to 311, there's a service portal that they can type in the reference number and see, this step has been taken, whether it's, the issue was abated, or a work crew was sent out, or they can call my office, and I can pull it up and say, look, a work order was issued, it should be resolved in X amount of days. Is there a way for constituents, or is it something that you've considered for them to track and see where this is? So if I call about the billing issue, it's been referred to an inspector, they should be out within X amount of days. Is there anything like that that you've considered that I think would kind of help people keep track of where the complaint is, who's dealing with it? Because it would also help on our end in managing some of these constituent calls if we can also look and say, hey, look, this is where it is, or this is where the holdup is. Because otherwise we end up tracking down email chains, or trying to reach out and work with your amazing staff here to figure out where the clog may be in communication. Is there something that you've considered to kind of take that thing online, or some sort of service number that could track where people are, so they don't feel like it's just kind of floating in this abyss?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would explore that idea. I mean, we have technology in place now to allow citizens coming to the system to look at. That means we might have to build an interface on the outside, so that means people can literally look at. So let me give a little bit more thoughts. But our staff certainly can inform the residents, work order has been issued to maintenance or meter shop to do this, following things and all that. But I appreciate your point is, how do we proactively perhaps let them do the discovery, the citizens, on their own, instead of us having to feed it. I get that part. I mean, explore.
That's all I got, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chow.
Councilman Reitzinger.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to echo my support for Mr. Chambers. He not only does he respond, but he gets things done. And not just by me, but also by my staff who asked me to pass that along. So I'll also pass along to the mayor's office my support for Mr. Chalmers, that position. Who on your staff works with the management team of Spinello, who does the water lines?
Our engineering construction team that manage these so-called on-call contracts or waterman replacement, actually literally being bid out, and Spinello have won some.
Okay, can you email me to contact people? And the reason I'm asking, the reason I'm saying this is because in my own community, in Mall Park, it's the DeSoto Road Park, of the 1500 block of DeSoto Road, and Spinello came into the park, and it's a very small parking lot, and they dumped 3 mountains of gravel and dirt there. So my constituents can't park their car there, and the kids are now playing on the dirt and the gravel, and less than a quarter of a mile away, up on Washington Boulevard and Gable Avenue, is a city yard where they could have put that. So I really need that to taken care of. I think it was really, I hate to use the word stupid, or didn't have any kind of consideration, just to dump those 3 mountains of gravel and dirt on the parking lot that's right next to the park.
Got it.
So if you could either help me with that or email
we'll take
me,
care of it.
I'll talk to that person.
We'll take care of it. I mean, generally, this is what you describe as a staging area. Staging area should be, from my perspective, that's our contract manager's responsibility to work with our contractors in advance with the neighborhoods, identify the staging area that can be used for the purpose of a project. So
They dropped the ball on that. They didn't do that. So
we'll follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council President.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Chow, I don't know whether it's water work that's being done right there at Caroline and Eagle Street. I don't know whether it's something with BG&E, but I have a number. I'm trying to find it now. And while I'm doing that, I'd like to commend your staff as well, especially Mr. Chalmers and Mr. Galloway, who I call even on Sundays, and I think most of the time they're in church, and they respond appropriately. And also, mainly most of your staff respond appropriately to my office on things that are important to the citizens that we represent. I'm looking for that email. I mean, I don't know what these numbers mean anything, but where is it?
You know, when you call, we always respond, right?
Oh,
We always pick
I
up.
know. But it's I don't know if it's you all or whether it's the other department of transportation. But it's I can't find it, but it has a telephone number on it, and it's a grate about the size of this, a little longer than this table. It's a big metal thing, and it has a phone number on it, and it has, I guess, the job number. It's ruining our grass. They don't need to put it there. So I'll as soon as I find that email, I'll let you know, and you can check it. And also transportation, because we don't know who's responsible, because it doesn't say anything.
Is it open top? Is it just like a box?
It's just like one of the steel plates that you put in the middle of the street, and they have it in our park, which is ruining our grass, because grasses begin to come up through the holes.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
Of the steel.
Once you find it, send it to me.
So
if it's not
when you're
ours,
looking for something, you can never find it.
Right.
And I'm also want to single out Ted Atwood, who's been doing a great job with some of the nonprofits as it relates to the energy and their reduction and cost of energy with some of the innovative things that he's doing. All your staff does a great job. I don't know whether it's because I'm the president or what, but they're very responsive and they get things done. And I do know that on Sundays when I'm in church and my members come to me, well, my fellow parishioners come to me while I'm trying to worship, giving me a problem, I call your staff. And I know a couple times, I think one of them was in church and took the call. But I just want to let you know that you have a very good staff. But one thing I want to encourage you to do is to do an audit of some of the lowest paid workers that you have in your department, because they work hard. And I know sometimes council people complain about their work and all of that, but I really appreciate the work that they do for the pay that they get. And if we can get their pay up, a little more than what it is, it will put more money in the long run into our general fund, because the more you make, the more you pay. And some of our sanitation workers and our water department workers are some of the lowest paid in the whole city of Baltimore, and we should be doing something about that. So I'm asking you to look into that and get with HR and try to get those salaries up, because they're some of the lowest, and the majority of them live right here in the city of Baltimore. Thank you.
President, I'm going to tell your pastor that you're doing constituent service work while you're supposed to be listening to a sermon. The Lord is not pleased. Councilman Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have actually worked with Mr. Klein for several years to try to include the metric of how happy is the council president for most agencies, but keeps not showing up in the budget. Okay, so I have a couple, I hope, quick and easy, almost maybe even yes or no questions, which is, do you guys still do the mowing on unoccupied private property?
Yes, we do.
Okay, because one of the things that came up yesterday in dealing with 311 and city stat is when you put in a call for high grass and weeds, city stat or 311 closes out the service request as soon as code enforcement does its initial inspection.
Well, yeah, that depends on whether it's private lot and or city-owned lot. I mean, the code enforcement do that initial assessment, and then accordingly, we'll get it.
This is just more of a, like, if we can get code enforcement to hold off on closing it out until after reinspection, so that if it is determined that the city is going to need to mow, when they do the work order to you guys to do the mowing, they would generate a second service request number that would be linked to the original one, so that when you've done your mowing, then that would be when the second one would get closed out, and the constituent who put the original request in would then be notified, now it's actually been fully done.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
Second, this is a follow-up back to Councilman Middleton's about the dumpsters, for that each neighborhood gets 4 uses of a dumpster over the course of the year. I'm working from the assumption that every neighborhood doesn't use all 4. Is that correct? Or does every neighborhood actually use all 4 of their dumpster days?
I can't definitively answer that.
You can get as many dumpsters as you want. Yes, you had all the dumpsters.
But I can definitely look into that.
Okay, the reason I wanted, what I was just curious about is, are we budgeting for some percentage of actual participation? And do we actually have the capacity to do 100% participation if every neighborhood actually asked for all 4?
Yeah, our busiest day is Saturdays, as you can imagine. Everybody wants a dumpster on Saturdays. So our capacity at this point is 25 dumpsters.
On a Saturday?
On a Saturday.
On a given Saturday, okay.
Right. So Monday through Friday, we have room for improvement, but again, Saturday is the big day. That's the day everybody wants a dumpster. So we have to limit what we can actually put out there on the street and remove in a timely fashion.
And are we doing corner can collection on Saturdays and Sundays?
Saturdays. It's a Monday through Saturday operation.
Monday through Saturday. Do we have a rough idea of what it would cost to do Sunday also?
I can do an analysis.
Okay, because I would say half of my complaints about litter on York Road come in on Monday morning, because it's been 36 hours since anybody emptied the cans. And
understood.
All right, and we're looking at hiring somebody else to do them on Sundays, and I wanted to know whether or not that would be a better deal than having the city do it. Okay. And then the last question, and this is just more of a numbers curiosity, on service number 675, engineering, construction, management, water and wastewater, looking at the cost per linear foot to rehabilitate water distribution system, the cost per linear foot increases when we do more feet or the same number of feet, and goes down when we do less feet, and that seemed counterintuitive.
So you're talking about from fiscal year to fiscal year, right?
Yeah, from year to year.
So those numbers are driven by market. So for example, the market is very heated right now. That means there's a lot of work going on. The contractors are not very hungry.
Okay.
The unit pricings are going up, and in light of certainly our president talking about, not this president, but the other president talking about the $1 trillion investment, is really driving up the market right now. That everybody thinking all these work is coming down in the future, and is heating up the market in a big way. So I anticipate that in the coming months, the unit pricing that will continue to rise.
But we're shifting from contracted services to in-house expertise. So we're going to be doing more work in-house?
In-house design work. So, okay. Right. So that means in the past, 100% of the designs being done by our consultants. Now, as a part of our rebuilding effort of bringing what I call the day-to-day engineering needs back into the department. For the last 18 months, 24 months, we literally hired 60+ engineers. These are young engineers coming straight out of school, and they are working and they are being trained.
Pardon my colleagues' incredulous look. It's because yesterday, standing at that same podium, we had general services explaining
And
that,
DOT.
and DOT both explaining that HR wouldn't let them pay engineers and architects and designers enough for them to be able to hire in-house people at the level that they would like to be doing so, and that's why they were still contracting out so much.
Well, I mean, no, part of our advantage is that water and wastewater is enterprise, and then so what we're doing is what we call investing for the future. That means we have vacancies available, and so what we've been doing is
But do you still have to go through HR to
we
get?
still have to go through HR, but then we've been very aggressive in terms of going out there recruiting these local, from Morgan and others, local schools around this area, recognizing, one, we never have enough money to go on there, hire the experienced engineers. So what we resorted to do is hire these young graduates to come work for us, and over time, the 3 to 5 years, they will become seasoned, they'll become experienced, and which are already beginning to bear the fruits, which is some of the design and engineering, so-called water main replacement, design work or cleaning and lining work is done by in-house staff now, instead of spending money with consultants.
So I'm curious about the possible difference here being that you're an enterprise fund. Does that allow you greater flexibility in negotiating with HR when you say, we want to pay, we want to pay an engineer this much, and HR says you can't afford that, and you say, oh, we can afford it. I mean, what?
Well, I mean, first of all, through the MAP study, the engineering, the entry-level engineer, that means people with no experience straight out of school, that salary has been being adjusted upward. So we don't have problem.
Let me reinforce, this is not a complaint or criticism about DPW.
No, I get it.
Yeah, this is about trying to figure out
how we do it.
Yeah, how do we get DGS and DOT to also be able to do what you're doing?
We're not doing anything extraordinary or different. We're going through the recruitment process. These young engineers with zero experience are offered entry-level salary.
Huh. Well, DGS and DOT used to all be in DPW. Maybe being outside of DPW, they've lost this somehow.
Or maybe we just need an enterprise fund for DOT as well.
All right, okay. All right, thank you.
Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask about calculating loss of finished water in the city. From a couple of different experiences that I've had, knowing about broken infrastructure that remains broken for extended periods of time, where I know that there's an unrelenting loss of water for months, possibly, certainly in some cases, years at a time, at what I would consider an unforgivable volume. And in some of these cases, knowing that smart meters were not installed as they should have been, and in other cases where smart meters have been installed and billing has not occurred subsequently. I want to know if the department has any calculation for loss of revenue due to lost product.
Well, first of all, let me just say this. As a utility, water utility, all of us, it doesn't matter which utility you are in the United States or even outside of the United States, water loss is a problem. It's a problem that we desperately want to resolve, right? So, for example, as I said earlier, we got 4,000 miles of water lines out there, and we got a lot of leaks going on. And that's part of the aging infrastructure problems that we're dealing with. Right? And so now, inside the city, we got 1,500 miles. So we're doing 15 miles per year for 100 years to replace all 1,500 miles. Until that pipeline is replaced, 100 years from now. And again, at that time, the first mile we install now will be 100 years old, will subject to leaks and the brakes and so on and all that. This problem is not going to go away unless you have a very aggressive program to replace before they become old. And so as a utility, first of all, we don't have the kind of revenue as each year we're already raising water rates. In many ways, our citizens are already complaining very loudly about the amount of money we need. But the reality, our aging infrastructure is driving the cost. Second point, understanding we got a lot of breaks. We getting average about 3 main breaks on a daily basis, and not to mention leaks, joint leaks everywhere in the city. Until we can go through and assess and replace, this is going to continuing on. And are we not concerned about leaks? Yes, we do. But it comes with a cost. And we don't have the money, the resources to stay one step ahead to stop every leak on the spot. The third point is that our current resources, our workforce resources, is not enough in terms of chasing after all these breaks on a 24/7 basis, which we already are. We operate 24/7. Now, when there's a break occurs, right? Obviously, it's more disruptive. It causes property damages. It stops traffic and all that. That's our resources go to first. And then leaks is also very easily to pinpoint because it's surface. We can see it. It's right there. So we dig it up. We repair it. When it comes to other leaks in the system a joint leak that occurs, because remember, all the pipelines are embedded, or when we installed it, is on a gravel bed. So when a joint leak could be traveling miles down the road, blocks down the road, before it surfaces at a low point, and we say, aha, there's water coming out of the ground, there must be the leak. Yes, there is a leak, but the question is, where is the leak? And that become a huge, huge burden for us. And then certainly technology come a long way. Our leak detection equipment come a long way. Back in the days, we had to drill holes on the streets until we pinpoint. But
maybe I'm asking in too general a way about loss of revenue. Why should it take 4 months for me to get a clearly identifiable problem resolved? And in the meantime, so when you're talking about scarcity of manpower resources and the value of them, and we already know that the people who are on this street who do this work on a day-to-day basis are some of the lowest paid employees, I have personally put more hours of my time in just to getting one problem addressed than it actually took for the labor to fix the problem. So more time was spent just on me doing that work than to actually go fix it. And it took 4 months for that to happen. And this was in a location where no smart meter was installed as it should have been. And on previous occasions, workers did go there and didn't fix the problem and instead lied in their reports and were not held accountable. I'm just wondering how we can have a scarcity of resources yet also justify this waste of them.
Well, first of all, I mean, if you're looking at on a case-by-case basis, I will be the first one to tell you that we're not perfect, right? But in the grand scheme of things, the fact that we repair thousands of breaks on the annual basis, thousands of leaks on the annual basis, chasing after 301 calls on the daily basis, that specific incident that is inexcusable that we should have done correctly. I get it, but the point I'm trying to make is this: is that every phone call comes into our office, every phone call 301 comes into our maintenance department is all priority 1. Everybody demands priority 1 status, and everyone expects instantaneous response from our workforce. But we do not have the resources to do that kind of response. I
But in this
wouldn't- I- but-
particular
but the
case
same-
that I'm talking about, a response was made, and the employee lied and said that
And that's
the
fine.
problem
We
didn't
can
exist.
have offline
And then
discussion.
another response was made, and employees lied and said that they actually performed work that they did not perform.
And I would say to you, Councilman, in all due respect,
And I have
that
requested information about who these employees
Relay the
are,
information.
and there's no accountability. There's no tracking of who responded to these.
relay the information to my management staff, and
Can I chime in for a second? I think this conversation is getting a bit outside of the scope of these hearings. I'm going to respectfully request, Councilman, hang on one second. I'm going to respectfully request that we continue this conversation offline. Councilman Dorsey.
Noted. Thank you. I have been asking about this stuff for a long time, so I expect that after this hearing, we can actually get some answers about it.
we'll do our best to provide the response that you needed.
But this, and I'll bring this up as a related issue, is that I have asked for several months now, since March 27th, about 3 high-rise buildings in the city that since their smart meter has been installed have not received any billing for any consumption, and these are properties that previously were billed between $8,000 and $25,000 per quarter. They have only been billed for their infrastructure fee. Is this a known issue? And since I've also, is this a known issue? Is it being addressed? And since I also know of these properties where no meter was installed at all, where I believe that all of the meters were supposed to have been changed throughout the city, do we have a simple cross-reference that can be used for the existence of an account, the presence of a smart meter, and that it is actually billing consumption?
So we have installed, in essence, about 99% of the meters in the city. There are 1,000 or so what we call trouble meter locations that requires additional work before a meter can be installed. So that work is ongoing. So to say that every account has a smart meter now, I'd be lying. We do have that residual that we need to work through over time. Now, the 3 high-rises, I do recall the email that you had sent, and I was copied on it, and my division chief, Ms. Ludwig, has it, and her staff is working on it, and we will get it addressed.
But so we do have a simple cross-reference capacity to say there is an account, there is a smart meter, or there isn't, and it is operational. This is a simple cross-reference.
We know exactly where the locations that do not currently have a smart meter that needs to have a meter installed after additional maintenance work or infrastructure work is completed. We know exact locations. Yes, we do.
And where the smart meters were installed and are not billing properly?
If they're not billing properly, it's probably due to a variety of reasons. One of them could be the reads coming in doesn't make sense, so that the staff intercepted, and then we have to examine it, making sure it's valid before it gets out into our system or get in the hands of the consumer. And that's called, we do that proper caring. We don't just say, well, bill it in whatever amount. We get criticized in the paper enough times about that. So
Sure, but we're talking in this case about 3 10-inch meters in 3 separate
I
properties
understand
billed
that.
to the same person, none of them billing.
But
any consumption.
Councilman, do we have specific addresses on those?
Yes.
We have
I
the
have provided
locations.
them since March 27th.
we
and
have
not
the
received any
locations,
substantive
and I'm
response.
sure Ms. Ludwig is actively working on it. But as I said earlier, right now is a new system. There's a lot of calls coming in. There's a lot of work, a legacy-related issue we are resolving. We just need time to work through the whole thing.
Understand. So, Director, can we do this? Where's Ms. Ludwig? Ms. Ludwig, can you get Councilman Dorsey an update via email by the end of the week on where things are at? And moving forward, if you could provide a weekly update to Councilman Dorsey on Fridays until this situation gets resolved, that would be greatly appreciated. Councilman.
Thank you. I have one last question.
Okay, please.
Different.
Go ahead.
I asked DOT about damage to city property due to vehicles. I know that when property is damaged, they are called to make an assessment of the value of that so that the legal department and finance can seek to collect that revenue required to repair or replace that. DPW is responsible for fire hydrants. Am I correct about that?
Yes, we are.
I know that I see them sheared off pretty frequently by cars slamming into them. I imagine DPW has other infrastructure that from time to time gets damaged by that, and you're called in, I imagine, similarly to
Yes, we do.
assess. Can we get, I know I asked about this, maybe it was specifically for DOT property, but I would like to know the value of property and the cost to replace damaged property or repair damaged property due to vehicular damage.
Yeah, so I mean, there's actually two parts, right? So you're talking about a vehicle striking, for example, a fire hydrant sheared off, and then certainly once we know who caused the accident or who knocked it off, the bill will be associated with be putting out. The second part is really the contractor working for us that could perhaps cause damages and all that. We accordingly send them the bill to recover the cost as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yeah, I found that number, Mr. Chow. Maybe you guys could see if it's anybody that you all know. Oh. Know anything about a Trafford Corps? Trafford Corps? Anybody know who that could be?
No, that sounds like DOT stuff.
It might be DOT. Okay, thank you.
But still, you can send it to us. We'll investigate it. We'll channel out to the appropriate department.
Okay, I'll email it to you.
That's fine. Thank you. We'll handle it.
Councilman Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chow, I want to actually go back to follow up on what Councilman Burnett was talking about with the water bills. So this is my 10th year in a row sitting in budget hearings, both as staff and a council person. And every single solitary year, we're talking about water bills and how the water bill complaints and the issues with water bills are going to be resolved and they're going to get better. But seemingly for us on the council, they just stay the same, or they get worse in some cases. New meters, old meters, and it just seems to me that we have to put in better accountability. And for one, actually this is really for the mayor's office and Mr. Klein as well, it would seem to me that maybe we should add a water bill complaint into 311. Maybe we should add it into the 311 app so that we can have some kind of tracking that people outside of DPW can look in. We can pretty much file a complaint for anything else on the app, but I don't believe a water bill complaint is the option. My colleague's going to check. But also, Mr. Child, with seeing that we still have both some old meters and some new meters, are we seeing an improvement with the new meters? Because it seems to me is that there is no difference based on the complaints that we get from our constituents. And the staff is helpful, and we know that they're overworked because this is the #1 complaint that we get in the city. People don't complain about violence in Baltimore. They complain about water bills. This is what we get the complaints about every day, all day. It's the #1 complaint that we get. But we can't seem to get our hands around it. We can't seem to figure out what the issues are. We can't seem to figure out how we're going to stop people from getting $30,000 bills or not getting a bill for 5 months and then getting a $600 bill. What are we actually going to do so that next year that we're not having the same conversation?
So I would say personally and professionally, we are making tremendous amount of progress in terms of getting ourselves into a steady state where water billing isn't a problem from a technology and or customer service perspective. However, on the flip side, in terms of the consumers or customers, residents understanding the bills and then be accountable for the amount of water perhaps used and or leaked without them being aware, that's completely another story. Would there be a day where there's no water compliance? I would say it's never going to be a day. Any utilities, whether it's electric, gas, water, whatever, all consumer-related services, you always going to have some complaints on a daily basis that we work through. However, from a big picture perspective, we come a long way. We now actually have a system that we can actually show and demonstrate the actual water being used on an hourly basis. So professionally, it's very gratifying for me standing here 6 years later since I started to actually say we are at a day that we actually can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, we do need a bit more time to work through. One, to continue to educating the consumers, continue to work with them in a way that we as a city agency needs to work towards. But I'm very confident from a technology perspective in terms of our investment in our people, in our training, and in terms of our expectation about customer service, the caring, the empathy, and the sympathy required from our staff. Those are things that we are making headways. I certainly would like to tell you, standing up here, coming next year, this time, I certainly forecast will be in better day than today. This is a new system. It takes time to work through the learning curve, and we are under the learning curve. So only thing I'm asking is that we, as a city, invested in the technology that we believe is the state of the art, and now we are training our people to be the best in class customer service representative. We just need a bit more patience from everyone, and we are clearly, my staff are working overtime every day in terms of trying to address this issue. We're not giving up, but I would tell you I'm very proud of what we have accomplished in the last few years as an agency, as well as our very aggressive agenda in terms of upwriting our operations within DPW, which is, to me, coming 6 years ago, is long overdue. But we're not kicking the cans down the road. We are turning every leaf over and addressing them as aggressively as we can. But in many of your eyes, in our citizens' eye, may be slow, but we gotta understand this is a huge system. And it didn't get to where we are overnight, nor can I get us out of here overnight. I need time. But I believe in our vision, I believe in our agenda, I believe in our plan, and I believe in our people. We'll do the right thing. So hopefully comes next year, we'll have a better story.
Well, how are we, my question, Mr. Chow, is how are we going to measure that? We can talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, but the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes is a train, and that's how the residents of Baltimore feel when it comes to water bills. We need to have actual measurables. Just polling my colleagues, raise your hand if you had to fix an incorrect water bill this month. Everybody's going to raise their hand, right? This is every week, every day for us. So we can talk about the progress, but we need to be able to measure that progress. We need to, Mr. Klein, have inside their budget requests some measures that's going to say we're going to have this amount of less of incorrect water bills. These are the kind of things that we need to be able to measure. And again, Mr. Klein, I want to say that we should push to have this included in 311 and the 311 app so that we can also begin to measure how those things are coming in. That's what we want to hear. We know it takes time, but we don't have time. I've been here 10 years. We don't have time. We don't have time to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. The same people, the same bills, the same issues, the same accounts. We don't have time because people are losing their houses, people are losing their businesses, and they're losing it not because of some error for them. We know that a lot of the citizens don't understand the new billing system. They don't understand that, and that's going to take time. But they're also losing, people are losing the house because of mistakes that we're making on our end, and that's what we can control. The citizens expect us to be better than that. And my next thing, actually, if you could tell us, provide a quick update as far as the water infrastructure and the consent decree. And also, I want to say that Mr. Galloway and his team have been great for us, and congratulations, sir, on your recent marriage, Mr. Galloway. that they have been great for us. But can you tell us, where we are in that and how that's impacting your budget and what you actually need in order to get that work done?
Sure. First of all, regarding to our water infrastructure, we're spending, a lot of money, a lot of resources on an annual basis. Waterman, which is on the ground, I already mentioned, we try to do the 1% replacement on an annual basis. But regarding the consent decree, our sewer system, and we certainly today, we're a lot smarter than where we were 2002 when we entered into the consent decree. We understand our system a lot better, more comprehensively. I would say we sort of walk into the consent decree 2002 sort of in a blind because it's on the ground. Nobody really knows the condition of it until we actually spend a lot of effort and energy assessing what it is. We have a very good plan in place. We are working very closely with the regulators, Department of Justice, as well as EPA, in terms of the revised consent decree, which will allow us to accomplish the remaining work. And of course, some of you may say, well, let's get them done quicker. Well, I certainly want to get done quicker, but I would say, but on the flip side, I just want you all to be aware of it, is not doing quicker, that means we got to do more on an annual basis. When you do more, what happens? That drives up the cost. So all we're trying to do is managing our revenues and try to stretch them out, flatten them out, the expenditure over a longer period of time to put less constraint or obligation on an annual basis so we don't overstrain our residents in terms of water bills or water bill increases. I mean, it has to be a very balanced approach, not to mention that we are lobbying the big way on Capitol Hill, try to get the federal government to step in to be supportive and be helpful by ways of money. We are gaining a little bit of tractions, but still we have to see what happens. But so I would say, as I face a number of environmentalist advocates and out there, everybody wants to see cleaner harbor, cleaner streams. So do I. But unfortunately, I have to manage based on the resources I got and without busting the bank. And it's quite a balancing act.
Thank you. Maybe President Trump will actually honor up to one of his commitments and invest in infrastructure in his plan to make America great again. Thank you.
Director Chow, request number 50. Can you provide an updated org chart to the committee, please?
Sure, we can do that.
Councilman Pinkett.
Thank you. Director Chow, Service 675 highlights the $1.5 billion wastewater consent decree. Does that $1.5 billion include the changes to both the Druid Park Reservoir and the Ashburton Reservoir?
No, those are drinking water.
They're drinking water. What's the total dollar amount on those two projects?
For which one?
For both Ashburton and Druid.
For Druid, if I recall, the bid price came in at $134 million or $132 million or so. The Ashburn offhand, I don't know.
Okay, so it's probably not that far
Yeah.
off. So I guess one of my questions are, with this almost $2 billion of investment, how much of that goes to local firms?
Well, first of all, we have very robust MBE, WBE program in all of our construction projects. As a standard, and we ask for 27% MBE and 10% WBE as a standard contract. Now, some of these projects, of course, we get into what we call specialty work. For example, for Ashburn and others, there may, because we are sitting on bedrocks. So, for example, there may be blasting requirements and all that. There's specialty firms. So we're looking for good opportunities, but we always look for opportunity for local firms to have their share. But then at the same time, as I said earlier, all the vendor, all the construction, whether you're prime or sub or minority or women-owned, they're all very, very, very busy. So it comes down to capacity. Do they have enough capacity to ensure us that they can get the project done on time? Because if I a local firm that I have 5 crews, for example, and I decide to take on 5 projects that in reality requires 10 crews, all I'm doing is I'm moving my 5 crews around, but not in the not able to keep up with the schedule of all the projects simultaneously. And that will, in my view, will cause slippages in terms of our capital improvement program expenditure on an annual basis. Because remember, what you don't spend this year, what you don't accomplish this year, get pushed into next year's CIP program. So that means it snowballs. So we try to ingrain a very strict discipline in terms of what we forecast in terms of our expenditure on the capital basis. Yeah, for this fiscal year, our intent is to spend it this year so we don't rob next year's dollar for this year's projects because project delays.
So I heard you mention the goals. So how are we doing as it relates to reaching these goals?
I mean, many places, many
So with all of
cases-
these projects, this, almost $2 billion worth of work, 27% is going to MBEs and
as a standard, but of course, when you break it down on the project by project basis, there are some specialty projects I mentioned earlier may have different percentages, but as a standard, what we ask for all of our construction is 27 and 10. And some of them actually exceeds when it comes at the end of the construction, that goal.
I'd like to see how well we're doing as it relates to achieving, those percentages because this is such a significant level of investment.
And that's why we're actually putting on classes to these so-called small firms, local firms, get them to understand how to do business with the city, and teach them to work with the prime. And we're actually putting on classes to help them grow with understanding, because we don't have enough of them out there to do the jobs. So that means because we're putting a lot of projects out there. So what I'm seeing actually is the same vendors appear on multiple jobs, and then sometimes we know we are stretching their resources.
Right.
And that which caused some concern on my part. So
Now,
we know we have
with
to
some
do
of
more.
this investment starting in 2002, so how successful have we been in the past 15 years in developing or growing local minority firms to help?
So if I just just by way of an example, R.E. Harrington, right? Some of you are familiar with them. They were small firms before, and then over time, the last 10 years, they have grew tremendously, and now they actually are near, in my view, almost can become a prime. They might be graduating from the so-called minority or women-owned program soon, but that is a success story that we support, and helping him to grow, to learn the trades, and to let him become who he is today as a firm. And he's just an example. Many other small firms are working on a day-to-day basis and try to grow them just like how we grow R.E. Harrington in the past.
Are there, so did anyone do any analysis about the number of jobs that would expect to be created through this investment?
We can certainly provide that numbers for you.
And is there any local hiring associated with these jobs?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a local hire requirement, right? So firm comes in, if the key is that when they bid on the job, what existing staff they have, and then what additional staff they need. There's that 51% goal, the requirement is out there, hiring Baltimore. So, I mean, something that we are working with the contractor on the regular basis.
So with these projects, we are meeting the 51% goal.
For new hires. For new hires. So some firms, they come in with their staff already, right? So they already have, there are a couple hundred people working in terms of that. Now it comes down to how many jobs they're currently working on simultaneously, how many additional people they need to hire as a result of our job.
Right.
That's where that 51% comes in.
But if some of those firms aren't local and they're already coming with their staff, they're bringing people who don't live in the city and might not even live in the region. And so we're making almost a $2 billion investment in the city, and it seems like we're not employing as many people as we could. We're not maximizing this opportunity.
So for example, it's a part of the consent decree. One of our requirements for our program manager is to create a small business a development program.
Mm-hmm.
And we have held classes with them. We actually have small firms that came in, graduated,
Mm-hmm.
and we recognize there's $1 billion worth of construction. And matter of fact, the $1 billion doesn't stop there, right? Because in terms of the capital improvement requirements, is going to perpetuate going forward. So we recognize the need to grow, but we are paying special efforts and creating an actual program called Small Business Development Program for the contractor who are, one, starting new business, and or two, expanding the existing business to take on some of these loads. We certainly are out there very aggressive in helping them grow.
Yeah, and I don't think this just falls on your shoulders. I mean, I think as a city, whenever we know that we're going to make this level of investment in our own infrastructure, it would appear to me that everyone should be committed to making certain that this money, I mean, we could literally, this kind of investment, we could have changed the course of our city, especially in communities that are disadvantaged, where people aren't working. And it looks like we just wasting this opportunity.
Right, but at the same time, we have to recognize one fact. Well, one fact is this. Generally, contractors, when they bid on the job, they want skilled workers.
Mm-hmm.
They want skilled workers that can walk in that day and start working. So that means on the side, what we're asking them is to create what we call a training program for those who are so-called not so skilled workers, so they can become skilled workers. So that's a program that's going on right now. But we, unfortunately, we as a city, we have our challenges in terms of getting skilled workers. And we recognize that fact. That's why we are trying to grow and try to, through training, through development, to grow that skill set with our populations in the city. But that's not going to come overnight either.
No, you're right. And it's already been commented, the work that you're doing as far as apprenticeships. And it just doesn't seem, I mean, this money and these projects don't just come out of thin air. There is some anticipation that, there will be these types of investments. And this one has been going on for 15 years. So, at some point, we're not going to be able to keep making excuses by saying that people aren't prepared for the jobs. What's happening is we aren't being proactive and preparing people for the investments that we know are coming down the line. And so people won't get jobs, but the city will continue to make investments, and the people who need it the most, won't be able to take advantage of it.
We are on the same page. We are on the same page. We are very aggressively working towards that goal to create a better tomorrow. I mean, I can't say anything more than what I have already said. I mean, we are committed. We are demonstrating through our actual actions to help the city grow for better tomorrow.
I just had one other question. It was related to Service 730. I just wanted to point of clarity. So it said that the budget includes $2 million in federal, and this is on page 431, $300,000 in state, and $12.5 million in special fund grants in anticipation of possible new energy-related grants, including an estimated 5.75 in BGE rebates. So are we waiting? We're waiting in anticipation of receiving these grants, and if we don't receive them, then the $12.5 million won't be allocated to this?
So what we basically, so let me address that, and you may help me on that. Now, what we're trying to do is trying to get the appropriations up front, right? So we be ready to receive those grants when they come. Now, we certainly are working towards getting these grants as aggressively as we can, and we certainly anticipate that we will. But from a operational perspective, we're trying to get appropriations done in advance of actual dollar coming in.
So when I look at the
ready.
budget and I see 12.5 million, that's real money. That's just not a filler.
Okay, you want to come on up?
It's unallocated grant funding, so it's not real until we get a grant award.
Right.
But it's appropriated so that when they do get the grant award, it doesn't require a supplemental appropriation.
So if they don't get the grant award, that 12.5.
Well, yeah, that appropriation will not be spent. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're preparing for these grants, and we've had the experience year after year now in the grants that we get. So we have fairly certainty that we're getting them. What changed on us in the past, we had understood that when we did an appropriation, it got carried from year to year. So we may have appropriated 10 million for grants coming from the state, and we had that block sitting there, and we might get 3 or 4 one year and then 3 or 4 the next year. Now we're told that the appropriation ends at each year. So we're coming back at the beginning of each year. We look at the year. We look at the past, our past experience and which grants we've gotten and our success, and we're preparing up front, doing the appropriation for the grants that we anticipate getting from our past experience. That's what this is. So it's you know, I mean, I'm subject to the state and the other people that are awarding the grants deciding that we win, but in the past, we've pretty much seen these grants coming through.
Gotcha.
Mr. Klein, do we know what the total sum of money in the budget is that is grants that have not been awarded?
I can get you that number.
Number 51. Does that sound right? Thank you very much.
And is there a listing of similar budget items, unallocated, funds represented in the budget? Is there a list, or is this the only occurrence?
No, there are other unallocated grant. It's all grant
Okay.
funding, so federal, state, or special,
Mhm.
where the agency is planning to apply for grants, but they don't know. There's not enough certainty in terms of the details for us to represent that in the budget. So, and you'll see, unallocated lines.
Gotcha.
MOED is a good example. In several of their services, they'll have unallocated health department as
Mhm.
well.
Okay.
Our agencies that are heavily reliant on grants. Some grants we know we're getting year to year, maybe a multi-year grant, just asking for the appropriation for the next year. But some grants we don't know as much, and so we just include some unallocated grant.
So are any of these unallocated funds, grants, in critical areas of need for the city? So, I mean, just say, for example, there's something in the health department. I'll pick one, substance abuse treatment, that is $5 million unallocated. And all of a sudden, something falls through and they don't get the $5 million. Does it mean that service just doesn't happen? Or do we dip into somewhere else and find $5 million?
In most cases, this is for additional service.
Okay.
But you can look, as we go through various services, and again, particularly with MOED, health, HCD to some extent, human services, and usually we know if we're losing a grant that we've had, and perhaps now we're going to try to get another grant source for that funding. There are some cases like that, but typically we're talking about funding that will help us to increase our service levels.
And the reason and this is my last point, the reason it's becoming clear to me, I think maybe it's about 10 years ago now, the city was receiving money maybe through the federal, on the federal level from housing related to public safety at public housing place, and we lost that grant, and so there was never any money ever committed to that. So that's part of the reason I'm asking, because many, especially now, we got transformation zones to try to make up for it, but someone would say that would be a critical service, and if we were waiting in anticipation of maybe this grant continuing and all of a sudden it stopped, then we left the whole population of people, unprotected,
Right.
With the resource that they once had.
Yeah, and we certainly, in the budget, if we have a situation like that, we'll point it out. Our normal practice is, if a grant goes away, then the service goes away with it, but we've certainly made exceptions to that in the past. I mean, we've talked about safe streets. That's a case where we've lost grant funding. We're trying to find general fund appropriation for that. You would see that later in a transfer bill, most likely. But so again, the rule is, when the grant goes away, the service goes away. We can't backfill every lost grant, and that's true. But there are cases, depending on priority, where we would try to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Stokes.
First of all, Mr. Chow, Mr. Galloway, and Mr. Chalmers, I want to thank you for your quick response, not just to me, but to my staff. Mr. Chow, after they went to the one-day monthly water bill, we get a lot of calls in reference to constituents that lost the right to have hearing dates to dispute their water bill. So I'm working with Mr. Thaddeus over legislative reference to how we can have that, introduce a resolution and bring it back. But can you explain to me exactly how the mediation process works, and is it working?
Okay, so you're talking about the bill appealing process. So just a bit of history. So in the past, we have the so-called informal hearings, right? So informal hearings is when someone says my bill is wrong and I need a hearing because I want to dispute this, and they go in front of the third-party person and basically tell their story about why this bill is wrong. And until we put the new meter in the system, because we read meters once every 3 months, and lots of things can happen within the 3 months. But generally, when the resident will say, "This high bill, I can't possibly use this much water," we as a department, is no way for us to defend. Unless we know there is a leak and whatever, it's very difficult to defend. So that informal hearing is there for that purpose. Speeding up to today, we have a new system in place that tracks hourly usages. That means every hour it registers the amount of usages we can see. So for example, when accounts are middle of the night, the water continue to be consumed, there is something going on in the household, whether it's underground leak or there could be a toilet leak or some faucet was left open. So the current process, when they come in and says, well, my bill is wrong, first of all, the staff will work with them to go through the actual bill itself and have that conversation. And then if it comes to the bill is wrong and I want to escalate this, the bill can be escalated administratively to the bureau head and ultimately comes to me, and the next stop is the court system. So now we have much more factual information to share, but at the same time, we also no longer sort of allow what I call the indefinite quantity number of write-offs just because one's bill is wrong. It's because what we want to instill is the accountability. Each person, we all own homes or where we live, there's responsibility in terms of upkeeping, maintenance, and of it, whether it's roof, whether it's window, whether it's air conditioning, whatever. Water is the same. Faucets, toilet floppers, the $2 floppers, you can imagine the amount of money it costs when that flopper doesn't seep, and doesn't seep for hours or days. It runs up a huge bill. So the appeal process is there now, in place, and it's fair. We have very clear policy in place in terms of what we will and will not accommodate, meaning underground leaks, how many times we're going to be able to allow a write-off. And at the same time, we have good information to actually to defend and to illustrate the actual usages that occur in the particular residence. So we feel we have a very robust system that's accountable, that's fair, that's transparent. But we recognize there are folks that I still want to escalate this through the appeal process. That's why we have the administrative process now.
Well, Ms. Indy Mary has been very supportive of my staff to explain to us the bill itself and the billing. So when our constituents call, we understand the bill itself. But I also want to mention I don't know if you get a list of vacant properties from housing, because we have found out that we are still charging people for sewage consumption when the building is actually vacant. So do you work closely with housing in terms of if they get a list of vacant properties? So when you do your billing, I found out, and Mr. Murray found out, that we are charging for sewage consumption.
So in that particular case, in cases like those are what we call, even though we have a vacant home and or a vacant lot that previously has a home on it, but no longer have a home on it, but it still have a water so-called meter or service online. So we don't know in terms of the billing system that house is being raised or it's been left abandoned or whatever. All we know is that account's still active until we get notified. At the same time, some of them, so from our end is that we'll continue to build because no one had told us that house is no longer having people living there and all that. Now, let's just say a homeowner that decided that I'm going to abandon this home and I want to cease to receiving water bills. They can do that. There's what we call through a process called abandonment process. Abandonment process is they had to pay a fee, so we literally go out there, remove the meter, remove the settings, so there's actual work to be done there, and then that will stop the billing going forward. But again, some of those cases is a business case. Some folks, because we don't know, some folks may say, the cost to abandon versus I'll pay the small usages now, because now we charge people based on actual usages, unlike in the past, minimum charge. And they may say, I probably would like to revamp or rehab this house next year, so it's better to leave it alone because the amount of money I pay through water bill is cheaper than the abandonment fee, because once you abandon it and then you rehab it, when we come back in, we had to reinstall the meter for you. There's a fee associated with that. So again, there's a business case they need to make. But at the same time, I think that lots of cases, unfortunately, is that in our billing system, we still see it as an active account. But we don't know, and we cannot terminate the service if we don't get the so-called command from the owner to say ceased or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. It is 12:31 now. Director Chow, Anthony, Jay, I know you're hiding in the back. Thank you very much. Your guys' customer service is incredible. And Kristen and Marcia, thank you as always. And I appreciate everything with the 3 baby sinkholes in my district over the last year. That
You
we named
have
all
a
3
new
of them.
infrastructure now in place.
Yeah,
at
we
least
did
for
a
that.
baby naming contest on Twitter. Thank you. Director, Councilman Burnett was kind enough, in the interest of time, to hold his question. Would you kindly stay after for a few minutes and discuss
Absolutely.
that with him? We're going into recess. We will reconvene at 1 p.m. For the tourism panel. Visit Baltimore Convention Center and Hilton Hotel. Thank you.
Thank you.